Jiang Zhiyue, a person with special abilities, died tragically in her previous life and was reborn into the Wu Dynasty. Unfortunately, the world is in chaos and the situation is turbulent. The common people are deeply in dire straits, and their families cannot stay out of it. Fortunately, the system is in hand, and I have it in the world keywords of the novel. Wu Dynasty. Taking the whole family to escape without a pop-up window. Wu Dynasty. Taking the whole family to escape. Download the complete text. Wu Dynasty. Taking the whole family to escape. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. The Jiang family of the Wu Dynasty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Jiang family of the Wu Dynasty in the spring of the 23rd year of the Wu Yuan era. At this early hour, the sun hanging high in mid-air has already baked the earth, and the leaves of the trees that have just emerged in spring are all wilting and towering. This is only the end of April, and this year's high fever seems to have arrived earlier. And many places in the west of the Wu Dynasty have been dripping since the beginning of winter. Not to mention whether the people can bear the baking, the crops in the fields are already unsustainable. However hot the weather may be, it cannot stop the gossip of the village women. Under the towering sun, several women stood in a pile surrounded by the shadow that had fallen from the corner of the wall. Zhi's mother, have you heard that girl from the Jiang family jumped into the river? A woman wearing a dark gray patched dress whispered. What's going on? Which girl from the Jiang family? The woman named Zhi's mother asked in surprise. Where else can it be from? That precious lump from Jiang Zhiyue's family in our village, said another woman with eyes hanging in her eyes. There is only one scholar named Jiang in the Jiang family village, and when she says so, she naturally knows who it is. Quick talk, I don't know about the big and tender things. Zhi's mother patted her thigh and urged her. The woman with hanging eyes pursed her lips and said, it was this afternoon that the girl Jilan saw it and called for someone to come and save her. You said, this girl from the Jiang family jumped into the river, isn't it because of the scholar from the Chen family? Said the woman in a dark gray patched dress. This statement was incredible, and several women fell silent. Who didn't know that the scholar from the Chen family had already been engaged to a wealthy girl in the town a few days ago? At this moment, Jiang Zhiyue, who was at the center of the topic, was sitting on the bed rubbing her temples with a bewildered expression on her face. She didn't die yet. Jiang Zhiyue was originally a paranormal in the 22nd century. She was on her way to vacation before, but unexpectedly encountered ***. She was shot twice to save someone. She remembered that the bullet had pierced her heart, but now it's here again. In the 22nd century, psychics had become the top combat force in the future world. While enjoying a comfortable life, they also took on the responsibility of carrying out special missions for their country, and Jiang Zhiyue was such a psychic. But not only did she not die, but she also appeared in this strange place. Was she kidnapped? Jiang Zhiyue moved her hands and feet and found no problems. Before she could get out of bed and investigate the situation, the door was pushed open from the outside to the inside. A woman wearing an apron walked in and saw Jiang Zhiyue frowning and sitting on the bed, her face lit up with joy. You girl, you've woken up, you're scared to death. At the moment the woman spoke, a strange memory flooded into Jiang Zhiyue's mind. Jiang Zhiyue quickly accepted the memory and found that she had actually traveled through. The owner of this body was a little girl with the same name and surname as her, who had recently fallen into the water and died. Her soul somehow entered. Jiang Zhiyue's first blessing was that the owner of this body was not named Dia or Area. And the woman in front of her was the mother with this body, Zhang Shi. Zhang Shi looked happy and shouted loudly towards the outside, his father, tell his mother quickly, the girl is awake. Today is a day off, and Jiang Zhiyue's father, Jiang Yuchao, does not need to go to town as his master. A crackling sound could be heard outside, and soon the small room was filled with people. There were even a few people who were stepping outside the door and looking inside because they couldn't stand inside. Jiang Zhiyue's sweat on her face. This Jiang family really has a thriving population. One of the parents of the Jiang family, Mrs. Jiang, squeezed into the closest position to Jiang Zhiyue as soon as she entered. Seeing her sitting in bed, she slapped Jiang Zhiyue's back with a single palm. Jiang Zhiyue was caught off guard and was about to fall forward when she was quickly pulled back by Mrs. Jiang. You're such a girl, why don't you want to jump into that river? Even if the water level drops, it's 2 times higher than you. If you're brave, you'll jump in. Mrs. Jiang became more and more angry as she spoke, wanting to slap her again. However, seeing Jiang Zhiyue's pale little face, she abruptly stopped her hand. The river that Mrs. Jiang mentioned is the one at the foot of Damang Mountain. However, because it hasn't rained for so long, it's not as deep anymore. It's just that Jiang Zhiyue, who used to know nothing about water, suddenly fell down and choked in the water, losing her life. The second daughter-in-law of the Jiang family, Sun Shi, saw her mother-in-law stop talking and asked what she wanted to say. Girl, did you jump into the river because of that Qinshuotsai? Sun's words were also spoken by a woman who had just gone to the river to wash clothes and heard the village gossip. When she said these words, the whole room was shocked, and Jiang Zhiyue also recalled for a while who Qinshuotsai was. Fortunately, Jiang Zhiyue finally found out who Qinshuotsai was. When she thought about the reason why she fell into the water today, she immediately decided to explain, I didn't. As soon as Jiang Zhiyue spoke, she heard another sound coming from outside. Why are we all standing here? Don't be that girl from your house who's not doing well, came a woman's strange voice. She continued, my daughter Jilan can't rest assured about that girl. She said she wants to come and take a look, please move away. The few people inside the room were so angry that they lost their rationality. Jiang, who was standing next to Mrs. Jiang, picked up the broom leaning against the wall and hit the woman who had just squeezed in head-on. The chubby woman who squeezed in was beaten by Jiang and screamed loudly, running around the room, constantly uttering curses at Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang fought even harder, and everyone in the Jiang family quickly avoided him in order to let Jiang fight a few more times. Jiang Zhiyue saw that the pretty girl who came in with the chubby woman was Jiang Zhilan, whose memory pushed her into the water. The chubby woman was Jiang Zhilan's mother, Zhou. Under the continuous beating of Jiang, Zhou ran out of the room in a panic. As a result, the door railing messed up and his chubby body rolled into the yard, just falling onto a pile of chicken manure in the yard. Jiang Zhilan was looking unhappy in the room and said, Sister Yaya, my mother and I are coming to see you. How could you let your mother hit someone just as we arrived? Jiang Zhiyue sneered and asked, does that mean we can fight later? Jiang Zhilan was taken aback for a moment. When she realized that Jiang Zhiyue had picked a loophole in her words to refute her, she felt displeased and felt that Jiang Zhiyue had changed her personality. Just as she was about to say a few more words to Jiang Zhiyue, she heard the piercing screams from the Zhou family outside the yard. She glared at Jiang Zhiyue and quickly ran out. Jiang Zhiyue sneered inwardly, wondering what gave her confidence when Jiang Zhilan pushed her into the water and now faced her so confidently. She won't show her mercy, but judging from the combat effectiveness of the Jiang family, it seems that she doesn't need to take action. Jiang Ji got off the bed and put on her shoes. She also planned to go out and see the excitement. In the courtyard of the Jiang family, Zhou sat up with her hands propped up, feeling something on her mouth and wiping it with her hand. She screamed again when she realized it was a pile of excrement. Jiang Zhilan walked up to Zhou Shi and was helping her up. Seeing that Zhou Shi had something indescribable on his hand, he was about to wave it towards her. He stepped back in disgust and let go of his hand. And Zhou, who had already stood up halfway, also let go of Jiang Zhilan and sat on the sharp stones on the ground, making a pig-like scream. Jiang Zhiyue walked out and stood next to Zhang, who was holding a broom. Seeing this scene, she smiled shamelessly. Jiang Wulang and Jiang Lulang, who were smaller in the Jiang family, saw Jiang Zhiyue laughing loudly and trembled their small shoulders, laughing heartily. The rest of them seemed to be infected by their emotions and couldn't help but laugh. And those who were attracted by the screams of the Zhou family outside were puzzled by what had happened when they saw the Jiang family holding back their laughter and looking at Zhou and Jiang Zhilan standing in the courtyard, feeling miserable and distressed. What's wrong with this? Song Furong, who was friendly with Zhang outside the door, walked in with a curious expression on her face and asked. Jiang Zhilan suppressed her anger and grievances, and first spoke up, "My mother and I just wanted to come and see Ye's sister. After all, I just called Jiang big brother to save Ye's sister and didn't know how she was doing. I was very worried. Now that Ye's sister is fine, it's better. Aunt Zhang must have been caring and chaotic before she started beating my mother." Jiang Zhilan mentioned both inside and outside that she called for someone to save Jiang Zhiyue and came to see how she had been wronged. Jiang Zhilan's words, coupled with Zhou's pitiful sitting on the ground and her trembling voice, immediately convinced the people surrounding her. An aunt defended Jiang Zhilan and Zhou Shi, saying, "Damn it all, Zhilan came to see your girl. Why did you hit her? Besides, Zhilan even saved your girl. Jiang Zhihai is the eldest brother of the Jiang family and Jiang Zhiyue here. Oh, there's no one who curses people to death as soon as they come to visit. I think she came to find fault," Zhang snorted coldly. "Pooh, if it weren't for my family's Zhilan, your dead girl wouldn't have known where she died long ago. She had walked through the Yanwang palace once," Zhou, who was sitting on the ground, said fiercely. Upon hearing this, Zhang pretended to take a broom and hit her again, but was stopped by Song Furong beside her. Jiang Zhiyue also grabbed the irritable Zhang family from behind and walked up to the front, saying, "My mother only started hitting people when she was in a hurry. After all, anyone who hears someone say that her child is short-lived is not angry, right? Sister Zhilan is so big, so she shouldn't be angry, right?" Jiang Zhiyue looked at Jiang Zhilan with a smile on her lips, as if she was really waiting for her answer. In fact, Jiang Zhiyue was trying to mobilize her mental energy, and after some attempts, she really succeeded. Although she only had a basic level left, it was enough to deal with people like Jiang Zhilan. She directed her mental energy towards Jiang Zhilan, and Jiang Zhilan felt a sudden headache, but did not pay attention. In the 22nd century, Jiang Zhiyue's ability was spiritual power, which could be used as a medium to control and attack human beings or animals. Although the ability is now only beginner level, it can still be used to disrupt Jiang Zhilan's spirit. Jiang Zhiyue looked at Jiang Zhilan, who was somewhat dazed, and sneered, "I fell into the water today thanks to you, but I always feel like someone pushed me before I fell into the water. Did you notice that you came so coincidentally?" Just as everyone thought Jiang Zhiyue was just asking a simple question, Jiang Zhilan suddenly changed her usual well-behaved image and viciously said, "Of course I pushed you down with my own hands. Who made Brother Chen only like you, this slut? You really?" Watching Jiang Zhilan suddenly stop speaking, Jiang Zhiyue let out a soft click in her heart. Her initial mental strength was not very good, and her gaze swept over the villagers who were shocked by Jiang Zhilan's words on the spot. However, this was already enough. If she kills someone, she still wants to consider herself a life-saving benefactor. Let's pursue her dreams of spring and autumn. Since she has occupied her body, she will help her regain this justice. Jiang Zhiyue's heart softened, as if something had drifted away just as Jiang Zhilan was about to say something. She suddenly paused. Realizing what she had just said, Jiang Zhilan's face turned pale. She turned her head to look behind her and indeed saw the shocked villagers in place. No, it wasn't. It was me who called for help when your sister fell into the water. Yes, I called for Brother Jiang, Brother Jiang. Jiang Zhilan quickly changed her tone to make up for it and turned her gaze to Jiang Dalang, asking for help. But she obviously found the wrong partner. Jiang Dalong heard what she had just said, so it would be good if he didn't go up and give her 2 punches. Jiang Dalong suddenly remembered that he had already walked to the riverbank when he heard Jiang Zhilan's cry for help. At that time, his sister was already about to sink. If she had shouted before this, how could he have walked to the riverbank and only heard? So Jiang Zhilan had no intention of calling out for her sister, or even pushing her into the water. Jiang Dalong clenched his fist, his heart filled with hatred, while Mrs. Jiang, Zhang, and Sun had already swung their fists up. Even pregnant Xiao Zhang wanted to come forward and punch them, but was stopped by Jiang Ming beside him. The villagers who were watching originally wanted to step forward to pull, but as soon as they thought of what Jiang Zhilan had just said, they stopped their steps. Jiang Zhilan, who usually looks at her good relationship with the Jiang family girls, actually does such things behind her back. Who knows if they will pull them up or not, and then she looks disdainfully on the sidelines. Zhou and Jiang Zhilan, who were beaten, found that there was no one to come forward to help them. After being slapped a few more times, they fled from the Jiang family yard as if. Jiang Zhiyue saw that the corners of Jiang Zhilan's mouth were turning blue, and Zhou's clothes were torn apart. The Jiang family was still furious when they saw Zhou and Jiang Zhilan running away. They wished they could kill Jiang Zhilan to vent their anger. She pushed Jiang Zhiyue, who couldn't swim, into the river just to harm her life. If it weren't for Jiang Dalong passing by in time, the consequences would be unimaginable. A few nice women from Jiang's sister-in-law also came in from the crowd outside, comforted them a few words, and then left. However, with so many people here, I believe that the news of Jiang Zhilan pushing her into the water and claiming to be a lifesaver will soon spread throughout the entire village. After everyone left, Mrs. Jiang and the Zhang family scolded Jiang Zhilan again before calming down a bit. Jiang Zhiyue returned to the room, and upon returning, she began to sort out the chaotic memories in her mind. Jiang Zhiyue pondered and wanted to search for some information about the Jiang family and this dynasty in her mind, so as not to be at a loss in case of unexpected situations. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Anger against Scum Men. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Anger against Scum Men. There are a total of 15 people in the Jiang family now. Mr. Jiang and Mrs. Jiang are the undisputed parents in the family, but they are not as unreasonable as other families. Mrs. Jiang also does not argue with his daughter-in-law, so they get along well with their sister-in-law. And the 2 elders only gave birth to 3 sons, namely the eldest son of the Jiang family, Jiang Yuchao, the second son of the Jiang family, Jiang Yuqing, and the third son of the Jiang family, Jiang Yulai. The Jiang family's mansion is also the Jiang Zhiyue family. Jiang Yuchao, the eldest of the Jiang family, was admitted as a scholar in the early years. However, after failing the imperial examination the following year, Jiang Yuchao couldn't bear his brothers to support him alone and decided to temporarily teach at the town school as a scholar. However, he has not yet taken the exam again. Jiang Yuchao married Zhang and had 3 children under her, namely Jiang Zhiyue, her brother Jiang Zhedalang, and her brother Jiang Jiawulang. Jiang Yuqing, a second wife, married the Sun family and had 3 children, namely Jiang Erlang, Jiang Sanlang, and Jiang Sailang. Among them, Jiang Sanlang and Jiang Sailang were twins, but their personalities were vastly different. Jiang Yulai, a third wife, married little Wang, the niece of Mrs. Jiang's maternal family. Currently, there is only a 10-year-old 6th son of the Jiang family, but little Wang is pregnant with 1 and has been pregnant for 3 months. Xiao Wang is hoping for a girl in her belly. After all, the Jiang family is famous for being kind to their daughters. The most important thing is that her men are good-looking, and it is said that women are like fathers. Xiao Wang thinks that if she had a daughter, she would also look good, so she really wants a daughter. Not to mention this, because Jiang Zhiyue discovered something even more deadly. Jiang Zhiyue found very little information about this dynasty from her memory. It is now the 23rd year of the Wu era of the Wu Dynasty, which is a dynasty that has never appeared in history. This reminded her of a novel she had recently read, in which internal and external troubles began to occur in the 23rd year. The old emperor, who was weak and inclined towards the path of cultivating immortality, practiced in the palace Taoist temple in order to directly listen to the heavens. The sons of the old emperor felt that he was about to run out of power, and they all began to cultivate their forces to compete for power and seize the throne, hoping to get a share of the pie. The court was divided into multiple camps in chaos, and different regions in the western part of the Wu dynasty experienced disasters such as droughts, locusts, and earthquakes, making it difficult for the people to survive for a while. It can be imagined that the next step is a large-scale evacuation of refugees and their families. However, the Wang family, who were guarding the border on the west side of the Wu dynasty, were feared by several princes and were lured to the capital before being placed under house arrest. The second son of the Wang family, Yang Ming, managed to escape and disappeared. When he reappeared, his appearance was completely destroyed, with a terrifying scar from his temples to his chin on his face and 3 fingers on his left hand broken. From then on, Yang Ming, who was once known as the little god of war, began to have unpredictable temperament. It was not until he heard that all his family had died in the capital that he began to launch a large-scale counterattack, and the entire Wu dynasty became even more difficult for the people to survive. The fourth son of the emperor, Wu Chongwen, brought the calamity of the chaos to Yang Ming, and this young prince transformed from a small war god praised by everyone to a great killing god shouted at by everyone. Finally, the fourth son of the emperor quelled the rebellion and killed the completely blackened villain Yang Ming. When reading this novel, Jiang Zhiyue still felt that the main villain was not wrong. The chaotic court situation naturally allowed capable individuals to share a share of the pie, let alone the Wang family with different surnames guarding the west gate of the Wu dynasty, without any intention of rebellion. It can only be said that it was a reckless disaster caused by the court dispute and turned into a pool fish that was affected. Jiang Zhiyue muttered to herself, "Come on, there's no need to defend others. Now I'm also going to become this pond fish that's about to be affected. It's better to think about how to save my life as soon as possible. After living hard again, I can't report to the Yanwang Palace again." Jiangzhiyue village seems to be located on the fiefdom of Prince Changding to the west of the Wu dynasty, which is the area most severely affected by the disaster that followed. She has the ability to protect herself alone, but now that she has become the daughter of the Jiang family, she cannot escape on her own, let alone the fact that everyone in the Jiang family is so kind to her original body. She should naturally repay her for taking over their body. Since that's the case, there are many things to consider. Food, silver, weapons. Jiang Zhiyue is a bit worried. There are elderly people, children, and a pregnant woman in the team, and there must be a lot of things to prepare. If it were in the past, she would not have worried about supplies. What everyone doesn't know is that Jiang Zhiyue also has an unknown secret, which is that she still has a personal space. The space was accidentally obtained by her during a mission, with a large supermarket and a weapon room inside. The things in the supermarket are generally inexhaustible, but the weapon room is not that abnormal anymore. When the things inside are used up, they are gone. Therefore, Jiang Zhiyue cherishes the weapon room even more and even puts a lot of things inside. Jiang Zhiyue thought again that all her abilities could come with her. Could the space also come with her? She plugged in the door bolt, tried to connect with the space, and indeed entered. Jiang Zhiyue stood on the open space with a surprised expression on her face. The issue of food and daily necessities has been resolved, and Jiang Zhiyue is no longer so worried in her heart. However, thinking of what may happen on the way, Jiang Zhiyue feels that she still needs to find a way to make the Jiang family believe what she said, and decides to persuade them to exercise more and increase their self-protection ability next. After careful consideration, Jiang Zhiyue decided not to disclose the matter of space to the Jiang family. She could not expose herself to danger until she fully integrated into the Jiang family. After thinking about these things, Jiang Zhiyue decided to find time to go up the mountain and take some things out of the space to sell in the town, which was also a good way to cover up people's ears. Fortunately, she was given the opportunity the next day. Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai were going hunting on the mountain early in the morning, and Jiang Zhiyue used the excuse of finding some mushrooms to go up the mountain together. Her father, Jiang Yuchao, doesn't go. He still has one day off and happens to be checking the homework of a few kids at home. Only Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang, the grandchildren of the Jiang family, attended the school. The other 4 small characters were taught to them at home by Jiang Yuchao or Jiang Dalong and Jiang Sanlang after they returned from the school. Jiang Zhiyue was also taken by them to recognize characters. Walking to the place where Jiang Zhiyue fell into the water yesterday, the 3 of them met an unexpected person. Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Yuqing watched as Chen Xiucai and Chen Jicai appeared in Yuguangzhong, but had no intention of staying. Yesterday, it was rumored that Jiang Zhiyue fell into the river because she couldn't bear the blow of Chen Xiucai's engagement in town. However, when Jiang Zhilan caused such a disturbance in the Jiang family, the onlookers must have spread the news. Jiang Zhilan was the one who liked Chen Jicai, so Jiang Zhiyue was naturally picked out. However, Jiang Zhiyue and the others wanted to ignore him, but Chen Jicai took the initiative to stop their footsteps. Sister Zhiyue, I heard you fell into the water yesterday, but it's still a big problem, Chen Jicai asked in the direction of Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Zhiyue felt a chill as she listened to Chen Jicai's call. It seemed like her relationship with him wasn't that good. Jiang Zhiyue stopped to look at Chen Jicai. He was a scholar with a fairly clean appearance, but his appearance was far from that of the 3 brothers of the Yuan family and the big boy of the Yuan family. What kind of eyes did Jiang Zhilan have in mind? He was attracted to this boiled-sliced cold chicken. Chen Jicai saw Jiang Zhiyue frowning and looking at him, feeling a bit puzzled. However, he continued, yesterday I heard from the village ants that you were looking for a short-sighted opportunity because I couldn't bear to think about my engagement. You understand, this is not what I wanted, it's just the order of my parents. Jiang Zhiyue looked at Chen Jicai with a forced expression, like an old subway man looking at his phone, his eyebrows almost catching a fly. How come Chen Jicai has so many scenes? However, when I think of the 2 words that Jiang Zhilan revealed out of control, the amount of information is really huge. Jiang Zhiyue looked at Chen Jicai with a smile on her face and nodded, are you saying that you and the girl in town were all forced to marry by your family? You don't want to marry that person, do you? Chen Jicai thought that Jiang Zhiyue had been moved by what he said, and his heart was a little excited. He immediately spoke recklessly and said, it's not. Stop it. Jiang Zhiyue suddenly looked cold and raised her hand to stop Chen Jicai. So what you mean is you want to step on 2 boats? Chen Jicai was taken aback by the question, with a puzzled expression on her face. Jiang Zhiyue explained as if she were a kind-hearted person, didn't you say that you were forced to marry that girl in town? I think you have such thoughts that even if that girl is with you, she won't be happy. But if you don't want to break the engagement and even say something to deceive Jiang Zhilan into falling in love with you, don't you want to be in 2 shoes? Jiang Zhiyue saw 2 ants walking side by side with baskets, and even increased her voice. Chen Jicai was so angry that his face turned blue and white. How could this be related to Jiang Zhilan? I have no relationship with Sister Zhilan, please don't slander us, Miss Jiang, Chen Jicai argued angrily, directly transforming from Sister Zhiyue to Miss Jiang. However, Jiang Zhiyue was also extremely happy, otherwise he would always feel chilly when he called out so warmly, and feel like he was being targeted by something. Jiang Zhiyue didn't want to argue too much with him, so she just said, I hope Chen Xiucai will take it seriously in the future, after all, we are not familiar with each other either. Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Yuqing went up the mountain together again. Standing behind him, Chen Jicai saw 2 women who had just passed by chewing their ears and stealing glances at him. He hated Jiang Zhiyue in his heart. If it weren't for her, how could such a thing have happened? Chen Jicai's sinister gaze fixed on Jiang Zhiyue from behind like a venomous snake. Jiang Zhiyue remembered another plot from the book. In the book, Chen Jicai can also be considered a well-known figure. In the 23rd year of the Wu Dynasty, the people fled in large numbers, and Chen Jicai's family was also prominent. Originally, his family fled together with the people of Jiang Zhiyue village, but they had different opinions halfway through. They were also outsiders, so they left the team and parted ways with the people of Jiang Zhiyue village. Later, by chance, Chen Jicai was appreciated by the fourth son of the emperor, Wu Chongwen, and became a staff member. After the fourth prince achieved great success, he ranked first due to his contribution to the dragon. And the son girl in the town, who had already been betrothed to Chen Jicai, also found Chen Jicai, who was already in a high position. However, at that time, the Sun family encountered a robber, and only she and a servant escaped. On the surface, Chen Jicai was filled with joy for his fiancée A's arrival, but in his heart, he hated the Sun girl who came out to stir up his good things. It was precisely because this Sun girl came a few days later that he could be betrothed to a daughter of a military general's family in the capital. Turning around, Chen Jicai found a way to bribe the servant, saying that Miss Sun had already fallen ill for a long time and passed away soon. As it was said by Miss Sun's personal servant, and she no longer had any relatives, there was no doubt about her. Chen Jicai also took the opportunity to publicly declare that although he had not married his granddaughter, marrying another fiancée Ae as soon as she passed away was not the behavior of a gentleman. Therefore, he would guard his fiancée Ae for a year and earned a good reputation for being sincere and devoted to his former fiancée Ae. But when Chen Jicai wanted to eradicate the servant, he found that he had already fled. Later, when Chen Jicai's politicians exposed this matter and suppressed Chen Jicai, they found the servant again, and everything was finally revealed. Jiang Zhiyue expressed disdain for Chen Jicai's behavior and just now proved that Chen Jicai is not a gentleman. Just because she was not deeply involved, she naturally didn't want to talk to him. At this moment, Jiang Zhiyue was squatting on the ground, carefully digging the soil because she had discovered 3 ginseng seeds. Jiang Zhiyue was overjoyed, and selling this ginseng to the town would definitely earn her a lot of silver, so she didn't have to worry about how to monetize the things in the space. I haven't been to the town a few times before, so I'm not very familiar with the prices here. However, I believe these 3 ginseng plants can sell for a lot of money, but I still need to inquire about the prices. And the basket she placed on the side was also full of loquats, with even some fresh and delicious strawberries on top. Just as she was focused on digging ginseng, Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai also came back together. Jiang Zhiyue heard the commotion and looked up, only to find that both of them were smiling and carrying prey in their hands. Jiang Yulai held 3 wild rabbits and 2 wild chickens in his hand, while Jiang Yuqing held a fat and silly roe deer in his hand. Jiang Yulai saw Jiang Zhiyue squatting on the ground and didn't know what she was digging for. She put down the wild rabbits and chickens she had tied up in her hands and smiled as she crowded over to Jiang Zhiyue's side, saying, "I didn't expect to have such good luck today. She even caught a silly roe deer. Tomorrow, when Uncle San sells silver in town, he will buy you a headband." Jiang Zhiyue suddenly thought of her bright red and purple head, and shook her head as she swaggered around with a big red flower on her head. She forced a smile and refused, "It's still not possible. Please leave some money for your nephew to buy fabric for clothes." Jiang Yulai didn't feel sad when he heard Jiang Zhiyue refuse, but he still smiled and said, "Then when Uncle San has money, he will buy you a pure silver headband." "What are you digging for?" Jiang Zhiyue had already dug out half of the ginseng, but when she saw Jiang Yulai, she was about to reach out and grab it, so she quickly stopped it. If it were broken, it wouldn't be as valuable. And Jiang Zhiyue explained in this way. "Third uncle, don't drag it. This is ginseng. If you pull it off, it won't be worth any money. Ginseng. Jiang Zhiyue spoke in surprise. Even Jiang Yuqing walked over with the unconscious silly roe deer and looked down. Under the enthusiastic gaze of the two, Jiang Zhiyue calmly dug out 3 complete ginseng. Then, looking at Jiang Zhiyue's eager gaze, Jiang Zhiyue wrapped the ginseng and let Jiang Zhiyue hold it. Jiang Zhiyue carefully placed it in front of her clothes, with her chest bulging and even walking cautiously. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. What should I do if I am foolish at such a young age? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. What should I do if I am foolish at such a young age? Jiang Zhiyue picked up baskets of loquats not far away and followed Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Zhiyue down the mountain. Jiang Yuqing also looked at the road and thought of going up the mountain again later to pick all the loquats. Tomorrow, he will take them with the game and sell them in the town. Jiang Zhiyue was walking when she suddenly heard a commotion coming from behind a thicket of trees. She quickly stopped to signal Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Zhiyue to stop. She took a few steps lightly towards a bushes on the left, but before she could pass, 2 wild chickens behind the bushes heard the commotion and flapped their wings, ready to run. In a moment of desperation, Jiang Zhiyue threw several loquat fruits out of her hand and hit 2 wild chickens. The chickens swayed in place twice before falling to the ground with a loud bang. She ran over happily and picked up the wings of 2 wild chickens, but her heart was jumping with joy. The original owner's strength was not enough, so she used some strength to knock the wild chickens unconscious. If the pheasant could speak, it would definitely harshly accuse Jiang Zhiyue. Do you dare to take us for an examination? You must have a concussion. But now they can only faint as Jiang Zhiyue grasps the wings of fate. Since childhood, her strength has been different from that of ordinary people. When she was young, she played with the little girls in the village and accidentally injured them a few times. After that, no one dared to play with her anymore. That's why Jiang Zhiyue, who was willing to play with her, treated her so truthfully. Jiang Zhiyue has been transmitting to her the idea that, you are so strong that you are a strange child. No one wants to play with you except me, and I don't despise you. If it weren't for the Jiang family's great love for the original owner, she would probably have become an inferiority complex. Moreover, Jiang Zhiyue ultimately harmed the original owner's life, but she is not doing well now either. Thinking of Jiang Zhiyue, Jiang Zhiyue remembered yesterday when she used her mental power to attack Jiang Zhiyue and only persisted for 2 sentences. She really went back to before the liberation, so she should come to the mountain a few more times to exercise her abilities next time. After all, her superpower is an ability to sneak attack without being aware of it. The 3 of them followed their original path and walked for 2/4 of an hour before finally returning to the Jiang family yard. As soon as Jiang Zhiyue entered the yard, he mysteriously closed the door. The person busy with other things in the yard asked with a puzzled expression, "What's wrong? What door should I close in broad daylight?" Jiang Zhiyue explained in a low voice, "The girl dug up something good on the mountain. Don't let anyone see it." As soon as the Jiang family heard the good news, they immediately gathered around. Jiang Zhiyue smiled helplessly and reached out his hand to Jiang Zhiyue, saying, "Take it out." Just as Jiang Zhiyue took out a large piece of cloth-wrapped thing from his arms, when he opened it, everyone in the Jiang family was shocked. Ginseng. Still 3 ginseng seeds. Jiang Zhiyue explained that he was lucky enough to dig on the mountain and received a round of praise from the Jiang family. Our girl is lucky. If it weren't for her following up the mountain, you wouldn't have caught so much. Mrs. Jiang looked at the things brought back by the 3 of them, and even though she couldn't see them with a smile, she insisted on hurting Jiang Yuqing and the Jiang Zhiyue brothers. The 2 brothers didn't show any dissatisfaction either. Usually, Mrs. Jiang likes Jiang Zhiyue, and when praising her, she always hurts a few men in the family. They are used to it. When everyone was curious enough, Mrs. Jiang gave these 3 ginseng to Jiang Zhiyue and asked her to keep them. Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue also went up the mountain carrying baskets to pick loquats. The next morning, Jiang Zhiyue got up early to help Jiang prepare breakfast. Although the Jiang family has Jiang Zhiyue, who works as a teacher in the town, and earns a lot of income every month, it cannot resist the fact that the Jiang family also has a lot of income. They all say that half a child eats a poor old man, so the family is also a bit tight. So the food can only be full, it's impossible to eat as well as you want. After breakfast, the group of people from the Jiang family who were going to town left. Jiang Yuchao, Jiang Dalang, and Jiang Erlang went to the town school, while Jiang Zhiyue, Jiang Yuqing, and Jiang Yulai went to the town to sell what they had harvested yesterday. 6 people each rushed towards the town with a portion of their belongings. They walked quickly and arrived at Guzhen in less than half an hour. Guzhen is located on the fiefdom of King Changdeng, who is the third son of the emperor. He is already 30 years old and was born to a palace made by the emperor's fortune. The third prince has no maternal influence and is not favored. However, King Changdeng had a good reputation in the fiefdom, and for the people, they believed in anyone who could bring them good days. Therefore, King Changdeng is still favored by the people here. However, in the 23rd year of the Wu Yuan era, the most severely affected area was the fiefdom of this Changdeng king, which was plagued by severe drought, locust infestations, and earthquakes. Jiang Zhiyue felt a bit sad in her heart. In Guzhen, the sky is slightly dawn, and people are already coming and going in the town. Jiang Zhiyue took half a basket of loquats and those 3 ginseng to the clinic to sell, while the remaining few were going to the restaurant to find sellers with their prey and the remaining loquats. Along the way, there were constant cries of begging. Jiang Zhiyue noticed many beggars in the corner of the wall. Her eyebrows furrowed, and she secretly felt that this was unusual. How could there be so many beggars in this town? Jiang Zhiyue went to the clinic because she had 3 high-quality ginseng in her hand. The attending medicine boy quickly called the clinic manager over. The shopkeeper took a look at the ginseng and wanted to lower the price, but Jiang Zhiyue did not agree with him. After some bargaining, he set the price for the larger ginseng at 400 taels of silver, and the 2 smaller ginseng at 250 taels of silver each. I even bought the loquat clinic together. The shopkeeper just received 3 high-quality ginseng and felt happy, giving the loquat a good price of 25 won per kilogram. The business was settled, and the medicine boy took a scale to weigh the loquat. Jiang Zhiyue also took advantage of the time when Yao Tong went to retrieve silver to inquire about the news from the shopkeeper. "Sir, why do I see so many beggars in our town? Is it the same before?" The shopkeeper, upon hearing Jiang Zhiyue's question, couldn't help but look outside with a hint of sadness. There weren't so many beggars in the past, and it wasn't all because of this natural disaster. It hasn't rained for so long, and people from many places can't survive and are pushing towards us. But the town is full of workers, and they have no work to do and can only beg for a living. Sigh. Thank you very much for informing me, sir. Jiang Zhiyue also replied with a furrowed brow. After collecting the silver, Jiang Zhiyue quickly went to find Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai. On the way to find Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai, Jiang Zhiyue used 3 copper coins to inquire about the situation outside Guzhen from the people begging on the roadside. The more she listened, the more shocked she became. How could this be so serious now? According to the plot in the book, there shouldn't be about 2 months left. It's hard not to see a deviation. It seems that she needs to hurry up and find a way to persuade her family to store grain, otherwise the disaster will start right away and there won't be any time for them to react. Jiang Zhiyue found Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai, both of whom had already sold out the items they had brought, each carrying an empty backpack. The 2 also saw Jiang Zhiyue's expression not quite right, but seeing that she didn't want to say anything, they didn't ask any more questions. After buying some things, the 3 of them were hurriedly taken home by Jiang Zhiyue. Because it didn't take too long in the town, when Jiang Zhiyue and the others arrived home, the Jiang family had just started preparing lunch. Obviously, the busy crowd in the yard didn't expect them to come back so early. When they saw the three people pushing the door in, they were stunned for a moment and then looked at them eagerly. "How is it selling?" Sun asked with an expectant expression on her face. Upon hearing the question, Jiang Zhiyue happily grinned out his big white teeth and took out the silver in a cloth bag from his pocket, ready to take it out. Mrs. Jiang, seeing his foolishness, quickly stretched out her head and glanced outside. Then she slapped Jiang Zhiyue on the head and the ninja angrily said, "You're not stupid. You're just going to pull out the money before the door closes. Wealth doesn't leak out. Do you know?" Jiang Zhiyue quickly rubbed his head while hiding and apologized, "Mom, it hurts." Jiang Zhiyue also felt that Jiang Zhiyue was not foolish when he smiled. Her second uncle would appear particularly naive when he smiled, but Jiang Zhiyue was relatively upright, so he wasn't ugly. Jiang Zhiyue walked behind and closed the door. Jiang and Sun were not even in the mood to cook and wanted to see how much silver they had sold. The group walked towards the hall. Jiang Zhiyue finally successfully took out the silver from the cloth bag and placed it on the table. Upon closer inspection, there were nearly 20 taels scattered, and 10 taels of silver lying on the table, looking pleasantly tight. Jiang Zhiyue looked at her family members excitedly and her mood improved a lot. She pretended to take out the silver that had already been placed in the space from the basket and put it on the table. "Oh, my goodness, the Jiang family just feel like their eyes can't even move. There are several silver coins on this table, 1, 2, 3. 20, 20.1, 20.2. There were too many silver ingots to count, and scattered copper plates were placed on them." Sun couldn't wait to take one and bite it in his mouth, then burst into laughter. Jiang Zhiyue looked at them happily and explained, "The ginseng was sold for a total of 900 taels. The older one was 400 taels of silver, and the younger two were 250 taels each. In addition, the loquat I brought was 29 kilograms and 3 taels. The shopkeeper saw that the ginseng I brought was good and gave me a whole sum. The price was also reasonable, 25 won per kilogram, so the total sold was 920,751. Surprisingly, there are so many." The Jiang family was shocked, thinking that no matter how expensive it was, it would only be 100 taels. Who knew it would have multiplied several times? Jiang Zhiyue also pointed to the silver on the table and said, "My second brother and I sold a silly roe deer, wild chicken, wild rabbit, and loquat for a total of 182,991. However, we just came back and cut 5 pounds of pork at the butcher's shop for 101, and the rest is here." Although the amount of money Jiang Zhiyue said was not as shocking as what Jiang Zhiyue said, it was enough to make the Jiang family happy. Although Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue can go hunting in the mountains, they can't catch prey in the sky. At most, they can catch a wild chicken and a wild rabbit to give their family a tooth festival or sell a few extra copper coins. The Jiang family were all smiling, and Mrs. Jiang even picked up Wu Lang and Lu Lang in her arms and said with a smile, "You've dragged on our girl's fortune. You've made so much progress this time, so when we send San Lang and Si Lang to the town school next year, and when the situation becomes more stable, you can also send us Wu Lang and Lu Lang, striving to be better than your uncle and get back as a master of the imperial examination. The girl is also getting old. Although our family wants to keep you for an extra 2 years, we still need to arrange a marriage first. We will take out 200 taels of silver to save your dowry. Don't you have any objections?" After Mrs. Jiang finished speaking, she looked around the people standing in the room. Everyone had different expressions, but they didn't have any objections. They were just shocked that their mother, Nai, had given Jiang Zhiyue so much as a dowry. After all, it was already considered good that the girl in the village could have 2 taels of silver by her side when she got married. Both Sun and Xiao Wang shook their heads to indicate that they had no objections, and Wang was even less likely to have any objections. Wang even felt that she had a baby bump, and her family was still fortunate to be in pain. Wang pulled Jiang Zhiyue up to her and smiled happily, "Thank you for your milk." Jiang Zhiyue originally intended to refuse, but Mrs. Jiang seemed to anticipate what she was going to say. She quickly pulled 20 silver ingots from the table and said, "Don't push them. Here you are, take them." Jiang Zhiyue didn't hesitate any longer and planned to put the silver in the space for a while. It was indeed safer to put it on her body. She just wanted to be more kind to them in the future. It has to be said that Mrs. Jiang treats her children well without saying anything, and Jiang Zhiyue strongly agrees with the idea of using knowledge to change the family. However, thinking of what was about to happen, Jiang Zhiyue fell silent again. Xiao Wang was the first to notice Jiang Zhiyue's emotional changes. She spoke with some concern and asked, "Miss Yu, what's wrong with you?" Jiang Zhiyue only hesitated for a moment before planning to tell her family what was about to happen. It was better to plan ahead as soon as possible for the things that would have to be faced sooner or later. However, she still found an excuse in her heart. In order to make everyone trust what she said more, Jiang Zhiyue put on a worried look and said, "I had a dream when I fell into a coma 2 days ago." Everyone's eyes came over, as if asking what dream they had. "I dreamt of an old man who told me that we should have a natural disaster and asked me to prepare more food." After saying these words, Jiang Zhiyue looked at everyone's faces and indeed looked incredulous. Jiang Zhiyue didn't panic in her heart, but when she spoke about it, her mood became less heavy. She continued, "I didn't believe it at first, but when I went to town today, I saw too many beggars and asked the shopkeeper. He said these beggars were from nearby counties, and I even used a few copper coins to ask those beggars. They said there was a severe drought in the land, and the crops couldn't even extract tassels. It was only because there was no way to survive that they wanted to come here and take a look. There were indeed many beggars in town today, and I even asked second brother, right?" Jiang Yulai nudged Jiang Yuqing and said. Jiang Yuqing quickly nodded in response. Jiang Zhiyue watched as the Jiang family began to loosen up, so she planned to add one last flame. And everyone's eyes shifted towards Jiang Zhiyue again, and they saw her reaching out her palm in the air, unsure of what to do. Jiang Zhiyue awkwardly smiled at the members of the Jiang family and said, "The old man said he gave me a treasure chest, and I was wondering if I could change something." Jiang Zhiyue dared to do so because she learned from the memory of the original owner that the hearts of the Jiang family are united, and she should not do anything to betray her. Even if she is betrayed, she still has the ability to protect herself. Upon hearing her answer, the Jiang family's expression became even more brilliant, with a mix of multiple expressions that were not to mention hilarious. Jiang Yulai thought to herself, did the eucalyptus girl's mind get flooded when she fell into the water? What should I do if I am foolish at such a young age? The other members of the Jiang family also have the same idea, and even have figured out a series of operations after Jiang Zhiyue cannot get married. If Jiang Zhiyue knew their thoughts, she would definitely roll her eyes to them. Everyone still stared earnestly at Jiang Zhiyue's hand, but her face was extremely complicated. Jiang Zhiyue felt that the atmosphere had reached this point, and that even if something remained unchanged, it would not have offended so many viewers. So, after pretending to be working hard again, a big red apple appeared in her hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Grain, clothing, and weapons should all be stored. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Grain, clothing, and weapons should all be stored. Looking at the apple suddenly appearing in Jiang Zhiyue's hand, everyone in the Jiang family was shocked. Who is he? Where is he? What just happened? There are no apples in this season now, and even the apples bought in town in the past are small and green. They turned their gaze once again to Jiang Zhiyue's face, but now there was a hint of shock in their eyes. The room suddenly quieted down, and even the youngest Goro and Rokuro felt the atmosphere was not right and stopped making any sound. In just a short while, the thoughts of the Jiang family passed several times, but Jiang Zhiyue did not see greed in their eyes and felt a little more comfortable. Jiang regained his senses and quickly glanced at the door. Seeing that it was tightly closed, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. "This is also your dream grandfather." Jiang opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to describe the scene. However, Jiang Zhiyue understood what they wanted to know and replied with a simple and joyful expression. He said there will be various things in this treasure chest, but I haven't used them proficiently yet." Hee. "You're a fool, don't you have the ability to be envied and even laugh?" Mrs. Jiang patted Jiang Zhiyue's arm lightly, suddenly feeling that her granddaughter was heartless and afraid. Mrs. Jiang's concern was reasonable, and when she mentioned it, others also thought of it, turning from shock to worry. Mrs. Jiang looked around and warned, "This is our family's secret. If anyone dares to speak out about our Jiang family, they will treat him as someone else." After speaking, she turned to Jiang Zhiyue and said, "You too, be careful in front of outsiders and don't let anyone see you." Jiang Zhiyue was moved in her heart, feeling that she didn't trust the wrong person. "You're right," Jiang Zhiyue said with a smile, "I believe you won't harm me." In her previous life, she was an orphan who was highly valued by superiors due to her possession of supernatural abilities. However, she never dared to expose her spatial ability, and now she has no choice but to be happy that she is from the Jiang family. Moved, Jiang Zhiyue smiled and agreed, otherwise she would have slapped her breasts again. The other people in the room also responded with a serious expression, stating that this matter was definitely rotten in their stomachs and would not be disclosed. After warning them, Mrs. Jiang looked curious and asked again, "It's really tender and magical. You have everything you want. Do you have grain and silver?" Jiang Zhiyue thought to herself, "You really guessed right. Without silver, there would be countless grains, but of course she couldn't say that." "No, I'm not sure what's going to happen," Jiang Zhiyue explained, then picked up a silver ingot from the table as if remembering something, and the silver disappeared from her hand. "Good granddaughter, where's our silver?" "We're out of it." Mrs. Jiang asked with heartache. "It can be put into that little treasure box," Jiang Zhiyue said, and then changed the silver out. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. What Jiang Zhiyue revealed was also for her convenience in the future. As long as the Jiang family did not suspect her and even had the Jiang family cover her up, it would be much more convenient. Lu Lang saw that everyone was silent and looked at Jiang Zhiyue's apple in one hand, drooling. "Sister, I want to eat it," he said. Jiang Zhiyue handed the apple to Silang and asked him to wash it. She divided it into 4 petals and the 4 of them ate it separately. Silang took the apple and ran out to wash it, but what he brought back was a small bowl. The apple was cut into 12 small pieces, and everyone could taste it. Jiang Zhiyue touched his head and praised him. The children of the Jiang family did teach him very well. Everyone took a sip, and it tasted crisp and juicy. The sour and sweet taste exploded in their mouths, delicious to the point of happiness and bubbling. Jiang Zhiyue reached out and touched the head of Lu Lang, who was licking her fingers, and said, "Wait until sister has something delicious, will you give it to Lu Lang again?" "Okay," Lu Lang arched Jiang Zhiyue's hand and answered happily. Jiang Zhiyue returned to the previous topic, and this time everyone took it seriously. It is precisely because of the importance attached that their mood is somewhat heavy. If there is really a major disaster, what should they do? Mr. Jiang knocked on the ashtray bag and sighed, "It's better to believe it or not, but we need to discuss this matter again. The boss has a lively mind, and we'll talk about it when he comes back tonight." Just when Jiang Yuchao returned in the evening and heard the news he had said, everyone became even more convinced of what Jiang Zhiyue had said. The emperor's health is not good, and he has not yet established a crown prince. I heard that several princes in the fiefdom have gone to the capital, and I think this position is all about competing for. Jiang Yuchao spoke heavily. "Okay, why did this happen?" Mrs. Jiang frowned and said. Jiang Zhiyue teaches at the town school and has some connections, which is also what he heard today. Jiang Zhiyue was not surprised to hear this news, which corresponds to the content in the book. The emperor is old and unwilling to abdicate, and wants to start refining elixirs for immortality. With many sons, the dispute between several princes is intense, and it is truly necessary to see blood. When Jiang Zhiyue returned, Zhang recounted the unimaginable events that had happened to Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Zhiyue pondered for a moment and asked, "Did the old man in the girl's dream tell you what kind of disaster happened here? We can also avoid it. Drought, earthquake, locust plague." Jiang Zhiyue replied, "Although we don't know exactly where the disaster will occur, our situation is not very good, and we can't stay without accidents. Can you analyze the current situation and what do you think we should do?" Jiang Zhiyue sat on the bench and looked at Jiang Zhiyue with a serious tone, like a strict teacher interrogating students. Jiang Zhiyue met Jiang Zhiyue's gaze and said calmly, "Dad, what you're talking about is the chaos in the court, and the warning you gave me is all kinds of natural disasters, it's the lower class people. If everything is false, we can all be safe. But even if my dream has a bit of authenticity, if we don't prepare for anything, it will be extremely unfavorable for us. It is precisely because of the turmoil in the court that even if there is any disaster below, the several princes in the court will balance each other and cannot rescue us in time, so we can only save ourselves. Since we have received such a warning in advance, we need to make good use of it. We not only need to store grain, but also buy weapons. The big guy also needs to exercise with me. After all, we have to have the ability to protect ourselves when something happens." After Jiang Zhiyue finished speaking, she smiled and looked at Jiang Zhiyue, "Dad, just do as I said. What do you think?" Jiang Zhiyue chuckled, but the girl, as she spoke, actually led them inside and arranged things directly. Unfortunately, if he were a man with such intelligence and courage, he would definitely achieve great success. In the days to come, let's listen to my girl and take a gamble. Jiang Zhiyue's voice increased a bit, as if encouraging. Mr. Jiang lowered his eyes and said, "Maybe God wants to give our Jiang family a way to survive." Mrs. Jiang also bowed with both hands in the direction of the outside and said, "Our girl is indeed fortunate." When the boss gave birth to her, there were magpies reporting good news on the eaves. "What do you think should be done next? You go ahead and do it. We all trust you," Jiang Zhiyue said to Jiang Zhiyue. No one else has any objections, but in the Jiang family, Jiang Zhiyue is the most influential one besides Mr. Jiang and Mrs. Jiang. Jiang Zhiyue believes that the biggest advantage of the Jiang family is their unity of heart. After gaining the trust of the Jiang family, Jiang Zhiyue began to arrange tasks for them according to her heart's plan. She decided to start preparing early tomorrow morning instead of late. Jiang Zhiyue, Daolang, and Erlang still go to the town school as usual, while Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai are arranged by Jiang Zhiyue to go to several places to inquire about grain prices and purchase grain. The remaining people first dig cellars at home, so that there can be a place to store the grain after it is bought. Jiang Zhiyue plans to go to the town to buy some fabrics or ready-to-wear clothes, and prepare some clothes in advance. In addition, Jiang Zhiyue also planned to teach them some self-defense skills. She came up with an excuse and said that it was her dream grandfather who taught her self-defense. The next morning, everyone in the Jiang family was busy with their assigned tasks. Because Jiang Zhiyue got up late, she couldn't make it to the town with the two brothers Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai. When they returned again, it was already noon. Brown rice costs 15 yuan per kilogram. It's usually 12 yuan per kilogram, isn't it? Sun asked in surprise. Not only that, but even the prices of yellow rice, millet, and flour have increased. Although they only cost a few cents per kilogram, if we were to store grain, we would have to spend a lot more. If we can't make up our minds, we'll come back and ask. Jiang Yuqing replied with a worried expression. Jiang Zhiyue, who had just returned from the mountain, happened to hear what Jiang Zhiyue had said. The people in the courtyard instinctively turned their gaze to Jiang Zhiyue when they saw her return. Jiang Zhiyue thought of what Jiang Zhiyue had said, pondered, and said, this should just be the beginning. The sudden increase in prices in the grain shop indicates that the people behind him have received some news, so we need to intensify our grain stocking efforts. Maybe the prices will continue to rise. Upon hearing this, Jiang Zhiyue and his team found it reasonable, otherwise they would have suffered even more losses if they waited until the price increased again. Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue immediately planned to go to the town to settle the grain price, fearing that if they arrived later, the price of the grain would increase again. Jiang Zhiyue also decided to go to the town with her, but the three of them still had lunch at home. In Guzheng, the scorching sun hangs high in the sky, and due to the hot and dry weather, there are fewer people walking on the streets. Eucalyptus girl, let's go to the grain shop on West Street first. I checked today and his food looks fresher, said Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Zhiyue gave him a thumbs up when she heard his words. She had originally asked them to inquire more about several grain shops in order to find more cost-effective food to buy. Unexpectedly, the two of them not only inquired about the price, but also figured out the quality, which impressed Jiang Zhiyue in her heart. However, he shook his head and said, let's go to the horse market to buy an ox cart first. Because Jiang Zhiyue has a small treasure chest that she can retrieve and store, except for some copper coins, all the silver is now on her. Mrs. Jiang said that she is not afraid of losing it like this, otherwise she would feel uneasy hiding so much silver at home. Jiang Zhiyue did not refuse, but she planned to keep accounts every day, otherwise even the closest person would not be able to resist her doubts. At noon, there were also very few people in the horse market, and the staff inside leaned against the gate to take a nap. Hey, buddy, hello, hello. Jiang Zhiyue approached and called out, but when there was no movement, he pushed his hand twice. The guy was suddenly awakened and apologized in a panic before opening his eyes. Shopkeeper, I didn't slack off, I didn't slack off. Come to my senses, we need to buy livestock, Jiang Zhiyue reminded from behind Jiang Zhiyue. A cold voice reached the assistant's ears, and he finally came to his senses. It turned out he wasn't the shopkeeper, which startled him greatly. The colleague smiled awkwardly and asked, several guests, are you buying cows or mules? There are horses, cows, and mules sold in the horse market. Most of the people who don't come to buy carriages are wealthy families in the town. The clothes on these three people in front of them are still patched, obviously not among the people who buy horses. That's why the waiter asked them this question. And Jiang Zhiyue didn't even think about buying a horse. The price of a horse is much higher than that of a cow, and it's too conspicuous. It's better to keep a low profile. Jiang Zhiyue turned to look at Jiang Zhiyue and asked for her opinion. Let's buy cows, buddy, take us to take a look. Alright, guest, come with me. The waiter took Jiang Zhiyue and her companions to the backyard, where many livestock were grazing. I'm not familiar with this Jiang Zhiyue anymore. It's up to Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue to pick this one. Jiang Zhiyue touched and looked around, and soon chose a cow that looked particularly energetic. Jiang Zhiyue also asked him to pick out a cart and asked the assistant to help put it on. In the end, during the negotiation between Jiang Zhiyue and the assistant, she gave him 17 taels of silver. Jiang Zhiyue knows how to drive the ox cart. After Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue sat firmly on the edge of the cart, they let Jiang Zhiyue drive the cart to the grain shop. Jiang Zhiyue mentioned that the grain shop is not far from here, and it takes only a cup of tea to get there. Jiang Zhiyue was watching the ox cart outside, while Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Zhiyue went in together to buy grain. Jiang Zhiyue has already inquired about the price, and the two of them went in and started buying directly. Brown rice, millet, rice, and flour each demanded 200 kilograms. Jiang Zhiyue saw that one bag of burlap here could hold about 100 kilograms of grain, and they wanted 8 bags of these. The staff in the store helped to carry the grain onto the cart outside. After buying grain, Jiang Zhiyue and the others went to the ready-to-wear shop again. There are pre-made ready-to-wear clothes and fabrics in the shop, which are relatively expensive. Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai originally planned to buy fabrics and wait for their families to rush out the clothes when they returned. Jiang Zhiyue thought that they would waste time making clothes and even hurt her eyes, so she bought 2 sets of ready-to-wear clothes each. In addition, I bought 5 pieces of cloth and some soft fabrics. I plan to give them to little Wang when I go back, so that she can make small clothes for the baby in her belly. Jiang Yulai was moved when she saw that Jiang Zhiyue even thought of his unborn child. Jiang Yulai exclaimed in a daze, "Miss you, Uncle San will definitely treat you as his own daughter in the future." Jiang Zhiyue pushed away his handsome face and looked at Jiang Yulai with a gloomy smile, saying, "Uncle San means that it used to be fake to hurt me. How could it be? Uncle San's love for you can be seen from day and month. You can't misunderstand me, you girl, otherwise if you go back, you will have to peel off a layer of skin for me." Jiang Yulai quickly explained. The 2 of them were chatting and laughing, holding clothes and placing them on the cart. Grain was placed in the middle and back of the cart, while clothes and cloth were placed in the front. Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Yulai sat comfortably on it. After buying and selling, the sky turned dark. The towns Daolong and Erlang had already passed school, and all the shops in the town were closed. Jiang Yuqing drove the cart unsteadily towards the direction of Jiangjie village. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Shameless Scholar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Shameless Scholar. At this time, in the courtyard of the Jiang family, Jiang Yuchao and Daolong Erlang, who had returned from school, also joined the team of digging the cellar. With more manpower, they started quickly, and the cellar was quickly dug. Mr. Jiang also made a lid for the cellar opening. After tidying up, a few people sat in the yard to rest and talk. "Why haven't the second and third come back yet? Don't lose my obedient granddaughter," Mrs. Jiang muttered anxiously. "Don't worry, Mom. Maybe it's just a delay in shopping, and you'll be back soon." Jiang comforted her, but she was also a bit flustered. "It's already dark and she hasn't come back yet." As he was speaking, the sound of the wheels turning came from outside the door. Jiang, who was faster than his brain, ran over and opened the door. She glanced around and saw that it was only Jiang Zhiyue and a few others who had returned from outside, and the second person had even driven a cart back. "Oh my, where did this ox cart come from?" Jiang asked in surprise. "Sister-in-law, let's go in first." Jiang Yulai jumped off the ox cart and gestured for Jiang to speak softly. Jiang also realized that it was outside the door. He patted his mouth in frustration and turned around to open the door, letting Jiang Yuqing drive the cart into the yard. As soon as Jiang Yuqing drove the ox cart in, everyone gathered around and began to ask questions with various tongues. "Oh my mother, you should let us catch our breath and ask again," Jiang Yulai said, looking at Mrs. Jiang. As expected, as soon as Jiang Yulai finished speaking, Mrs. Jiang's slap was about to strike, causing him to quickly hide behind Jiang Zhiyue. "Grandma, let's have a bowl of water first before we talk about the afternoon." Jiang Zhiyue smiled and hugged Mrs. Jiang's arm. Mrs. Jiang's anger immediately subsided, and she painfully asked a few boys to fetch the cold water that had been prepared long ago. After drinking a bowl of water, Jiang Zhiyue began to talk about what happened this afternoon, including the cart, grain, and cloth she bought. Sun looked at the clothes piled up on the grain and felt sorry, saying, "Why did you buy so many clothes and fabrics? It's so wasteful. We're all dressed well. Auntie, our clothes are too old. Anyway, since we have money now, we should prepare some for now," explained Jiang Zhiyue. At the Jiang family, only the clothes of Jiang Zhiyue and her father Jiang Yuchao are better, without any patches on them. Jiang Yuchao is going to teach in school and needs to pay attention to their appearance, while Jiang Zhiyue's clothes are because the Jiang family gave her all the good materials. On the other hand, the clothes of the other few people were more or less patched, even on the clothes of the young man Erlang who was going to school. Moreover, Jiang Zhiyue also has her own ideas. Although there was not much introduction to Jiangzhie village in the original book, Chen Jizai, who lived in Jiangzhie village, was also among the refugees. 80% of Jiangzhie village was also in the disaster-stricken area, so the clothes she bought were made of coarse cotton fabric, durable and comfortable. Miss Yu is right, let's wear it when we buy it. Mrs. Jiang actually looked at it with ease. She thought that if it was really what her granddaughter said, she wouldn't know what the future would be like. It's better to live a better life now and have fun in time. It has to be said that the person who is most open-minded in this matter is actually the elderly in the family. Upon hearing about new clothes, Goro Rokuro couldn't wait to climb onto the ox cart. Although Goro Rokuro was older than them, he couldn't resist it. However, Goro Rokuro had always been a rascal, and after picking them up for a long time without taking them off, he also ran over and tossed them around together. Jiang Yulai dug out the fabric specially bought by Jiang Zhiyue from the cart and brought it to little Wang, saying, "This is something Miss Yu specifically bought for our child. Please make some small clothes." Xiao Wang touched the smooth fabric in her hand and smiled gratefully at Jiang Zhiyue, who also smiled back. Mrs. Jiang was getting a headache from the kids climbing the car. She slapped Wu Lang on the buttocks and then said to the standing people, "First, unload the things from the car. Take the clothes and fabrics to the main house for a while before distributing them. Move the food to the cellar, don't make a fuss and attract people." The three boys who climbed onto the car slid down the grain bag and stood aside, intending to wait for help with moving clothes. Jiang Yuqing picked up the clothes from the grain bag and handed them to the boys who were eagerly waiting beside him, while the cloth was carried in by Wang and Sunday. The remaining people are each carrying a bag of grain and moving it into the cellar. Jiang Zhiyue was very strong. After bringing the cloth into the house, she grabbed the middle of a bag of grain with one hand and easily picked it up with just one hand. The Jiang family all know that she is very strong, and it's not very strange. After moving the food, it was already completely dark. When they were just moving things, Mrs. Jiang and little Wang were cooking, and now the rice is also out of the pot. There are many Jiang family members, and the dining table is a large wooden square table, but it cannot accommodate all the people. San Lang, Si Lang, Wu Lang, and Lu Lang stood eating with bowls and chopsticks, picking up a chopstick whenever they wanted to eat anything. After dinner, Jiang Zhiyue propped up her tired body and washed it before falling into deep sleep. The next morning, before Jiang Zhiyue woke up, the yard was bustling with activity, and the roosters' chirping became louder and louder. Jiang Zhiyue squatted in the yard, frowning and brushing her teeth with willow branches. The lack of a toothbrush here made her feel uncomfortable. We still need to find a way to take out the toothbrush and use it. Willow brushing always feels unclean and uncomfortable. "Girl, are we still going to the town to buy grain today?" Jiang Yuqing asked. "Buy, but I won't go today. Remember to go to another grain store to avoid attracting attention," said Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Zhiyue thought that she bought 800 kilograms of grain yesterday, and when the crops were harvested, she could still have some. It should be enough for them to eat for the next few months. Even if it's not enough, there's still room for her. He had another idea when he asked Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai to continue buying grain. "Our family's food is almost ready, but my mother and aunt's family don't know what the situation is now. Let's prepare for it first. When they run out of food, we will give them the price we bought. It's just that Uncle Air and Uncle San have to go twice more," said Jiang Zhiyue. In Jiang Zhiyue's memory, her grandmother was very kind to her mother and her two uncles were also good, but they didn't come to the Jiang family village a few times. After all, their daughter got married and they came so afraid of being accused of sucking her blood to live. Xiao Wang's maternal family is Mrs. Jiang's elder brother. Mrs. Jiang's generation only had her and her elder brother, and all the older generations have passed away. Xiao Wang often came here to play when she was a child, and she was considered a childhood sweetheart with Jiang Zhiyue. Mrs. Jiang also wanted to know the root of the matter, so she made the decision to arrange a marriage between Jiang Zhiyue and Xiao Wang. On the contrary, Sun's relationship with her mother's family was not very close. After all, it was only that family, but she wished to drink more blood from her married daughter. Jiang Zhiyue looked down on that person in her heart. What Jiang Zhiyue said just now was heard by Zhang, Sun, and Xiao Wang, and they all said in their hearts that being unhappy was false. After Jiang Zhiyue talked about this dream, they didn't want to go to her mother's house, but they were worried that the more people knew about Jiang Zhiyue, the more dangerous she would be, so they didn't dare to mention it. Now that Jiang Zhiyue talked about this, it can be considered a big stone to lighten their hearts. Both Zhang and Xiao Wang were overjoyed, while Sun's face remained calm, unsure of his thoughts. After dinner, Jiang Zhiyue carried a backpack and went up the mountain alone. She has been here for many days, and her abilities are still beginner, so today she plans to go to the mountain to practice her skills with small animals. The consecutive months of drought have also had a significant impact on Damang Mountain. When Jiang Zhiyue passed by the river at the foot of Damang Mountain, she found that the water level had dropped a lot. In just a few days, she could already see the mud below the river from the surface. Jiang Zhiyue was worried in her heart, but she couldn't stop everything from happening. All she could do now was to do her best to protect the safety of the Jiang family. She continued walking up the mountain, intending to walk deeper into the mountains. After walking for a few minutes, Jiang Zhiyue heard a voice coming from not far away. Due to her supernatural abilities, she could still hear it clearly even at some distance. "Brother Chen, I noticed that your wallet is old. I have embroidered a new one for you." Jiang Zhiyue could tell that it was Jiang Zhilan's voice. She didn't know what Jiang Zhilan had done up this mountain. Jiang Zhiyue didn't want to be caught and entangled with her again. She slowed down her steps and hid behind a tree. "Sister Zhilan, this is not acceptable. I am a man who has already engaged in marriage, how can I accept the purse you embroidered with your own hands?" Another voice came, and Jiang Zhiyue carefully poked her head out from behind the tree and found it to be Chen Jizai. Jiang Zhiyue was puzzled in her heart. After Chen Jizai passed the imperial examination as a scholar, she was taken in as a student by a teacher in the county. Shouldn't he be in the county school at this time? Is ancient education so lax? As soon as Chen Jizai said his refusal, he continued, "But Sister Zhilan is really clever and skillful. The embroidered purse looks so beautiful, unlike the one in town." "Hey!" Chen Jizai's words seemed to have been said without saying anything, and Jiang Zhilan's sad mood suddenly brightened after being rejected. Jiang Zhilan felt that Chen Jizai's words meant praising her for being more considerate than his fiancée A.E. in town. Jiang Zhilan lowered her head and shyly smiled, putting her purse in Chen Jizai's hand and said, "If Chen likes it, it's good. Don't worry, the one in town who doesn't know how to care for you, I will." Jiang Zhilan, who lowered her head, did not see the mockery in Chen Jizai's eyes that flashed by. She still felt that Chen Jizai was a rare good person. Sister Zhilan is so gentle and considerate. The person who marries you in the future is really lucky, Chen Jizai said with a seemingly unintentional expression. "Brother Chen, in Zhilan's heart. You are the only one in her heart." Jiang Zhilan confessed shyly, hoping he could accept her. Jiang Zhiyue heard both of them having greasy and crooked conversations, feeling bored in her heart. She was about to quietly leave when she heard Chen Jizai mention her name. "I understand Sister Zhilan's intentions. I heard from the villagers that a few days ago, Sister Zhiyue fell into the water and it was you." Chen Jizai asked with an incredulous expression. I just want to teach her a lesson for you, who let her trample on Chen's sincerity." Jiang Zhilan hurriedly explained, although she was jealous of Chen Jizai always saying that Jiang Zhiyue was better than her in front of her, she didn't want to leave a malicious impression on Chen Jizai. Chen Jizai looked conflicted and said for a while, "You're really... well, you're also doing it for me. I won't blame you." After speaking, she placed her hand on Jiang Zhilan's shoulder and patted it with comfort. Jiang Zhilan looked up at him with a moved expression on her face. If it weren't for the wrong timing, Jiang Zhiyue would have wanted to play them a piece of music that suited the occasion to boost their mood. I used to think that Jiang Zhilan's pushing her into the water was all due to her own jealousy, but now it seems that it's not entirely the case. It's likely that this Chen Jizai's pushing helped. Since they are so mutually interested, she can lend them a helping hand. Let's choose him as the first training subject for today. Jiang Zhiyue is controlling her mental power to spread towards Chen Jizai. Originally, Jiang Zhilan was looking up at Chen Jizai with a raised face, feeling that he was becoming more and more handsome. She also felt the warmth that Chen Jizai had placed on her shoulder, and her face turned red with embarrassment. As a result, seeing Chen Jizai staring at her and slowly lowering her head, Jiang Zhilan shyly closed her eyes and tiptoed up. Chen Jizai felt a momentary daze. When he was awake, he saw an enlarged face in front of him and felt the touch under his mouth. He suddenly regained consciousness and retreated back. A flash of doubt and disgust flashed through his eyes, and he spoke quickly, "I'll leave first." Without waiting for Jiang Zhilan to be stunned, she took the lead in running down the mountain. Jiang Zhilan twisted excitedly in place. Brother Chen must have me in his heart, otherwise how could he kiss me? He must have been shy when he just ran away. It has to be said that brain stimulation is a good thing, but Jiang Zhiyue is somewhat expecting them to entangle with each other and have a dog-biting situation. Without stopping any longer, Jiang Zhiyue continued to walk up the mountain. As for how Jiang Zhilan and Chen Ji would develop, she didn't care so much. However, being stuck by Jiang Zhilan, Chen Ji might not easily let go even if she wanted to. Just let the two dogs bite her, she has more important things to do now. Jiang Zhiyue stopped when she saw wild chickens and rabbits along the way, and instead of using her hands to catch them, she used her spiritual power to attack. Jiang Zhiyue's current mental power is only at a beginner level and only affects creatures within 5 meters of her surroundings. Her mental power has a short lifespan, but when her level improves, even if she is 100 meters away, she can still give it a try. At that time, it can be said that killing is invisible. The spiritual thread spread towards 2 wild chickens not far away, but they were not aware of the danger and continued to search for food on the ground. When Jiang Zhiyue wrapped her spiritual thread over 2 wild chickens, she quickly controlled her spiritual power and strangled them on their heads. The pheasant stood still, as if nothing had happened. When a gust of wind blew by, both pheasants tilted to the ground at the same time, losing their lives. Jiang Zhiyue walked over and put 2 wild chickens in the basket, then threw them into the space together. Next, Jiang Zhiyue saw a wild chicken killing a wild chicken, and a wild rabbit killing a wild rabbit. The animals on the mountain ran in panic, wanting to stay away from her, the little witch who killed a chicken/rabbit without blinking an eye. However, without exception, Jiang Zhiyue took her in. On the way, Jiang Zhiyue also encountered a snake who wanted to ambush her, but she also treated her as one of the trainers for mental strength, and then she picked it up with a stick and put it in her backpack. Feeling tired from running, Jiang Zhiyue found a relatively sturdy tree and climbed up, intending to drink some water. This trip up the mountain caught 7 wild chickens, 3 rabbits, and a snake with the thickness of her arm. Jiang Zhiyue drank the juice taken out of the space, still feeling a bit regretful for not encountering large wild animals. She even thought about catching a wild boar and taking it back to roast dry meat, but didn't even see a trace. With this thought in mind, there was a great commotion coming from afar. The big tree under Jiang Zhiyue shook, and she stood firm and looked in the direction of the commotion. Surprisingly, a blind bear and an adult wild boar were fighting. Jiang Zhiyue was so excited that she rubbed her little hands. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Pre-disaster feelings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Pre-disaster feelings. Jiang Zhiyue stood steadily on the treetop, watching from a distance the battle between the wild boar and the big black bear. The big black bear stood up and suddenly patted the wild boar, which let out a painful groan. Jiang Zhiyue saw the wild boar unwilling to be outdone and heading towards the big black bear. The wild boar looked like it weighed nearly 200 pounds, almost as big as the big black bear. She waited quietly, intending to wait until the end of the battle between these two before picking up the leak. She is the one who benefits from the competition between sandpipers and clams. After a while, Jiang Zhiyue felt that the battle was about to end, so she quickly ran down the tree towards that side. When she arrived, she did indeed see the wild boar pushing the big black bear far away, and the big black bear struggled a few times but couldn't stand up. I didn't expect that this wild boar really killed the big black bear. What Jiang Zhiyue didn't know was that the big black bear was definitely killed by herself. Before she arrived, the big black bear rushed towards the wild boar, but as soon as the boar dodged, the big black bear collided with a big tree due to inertia, which allowed the wild boar to succeed. But now both of them are hers, and the commotion of Jiang Zhiyue's arrival made the injured wild boar hear it and let out an angry growl. As the wild boar rushed over, Jiang Zhiyue quickly took out a long knife from the space and swung it towards its head, directly ending its life. The blood gushed out and splashed on Jiang Zhiyue's body. She wiped her face, and the blood spread on her face. She put away her long knife and walked towards the wild boar and big black bear lying on the ground. She tried to drag, but the wild boar and black bear were too big, and her height was not enough to lift them. The wild boar was covered in blood again, and she didn't want to throw it into the space. She threw the black bear into the open space and dragged the wild boar down the mountain. Jiang's family is still some distance away from the bottom of the mountain. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Jiang Zhiyue took a relatively remote road back home. Jiang Zhiyue pulled the wild boar through the door and suddenly transformed into a big black bear and baskets of wild animals, which immediately startled the people busy in the yard. Oh my goodness, there's so much blood on my body. Let me see where I got injured. Mrs. Jiang saw that Jiang Zhiyue was covered in blood, so she didn't have time to pay attention to the prey on the ground. She painfully pulled the person to take a look. I'm not injured, it's all the blood of that wild creature, Jiang Zhiyue explained. Mrs. Jiang still felt uneasy and carefully looked at the person from top to bottom before letting her go. After learning that Jiang Zhiyue was not injured, everyone's attention was drawn to the wild boar and big black bear in the yard. Jiang Zhiyue village is adjacent to the mountain, and everyone knows that there is danger in the deep mountains and no one dares to go. Unexpectedly, Jiang Zhiyue, a little girl, caught two heads and came back directly. Jiang asked about the situation, mainly worried that she was injured. Jiang Zhiyue had no choice but to explain again. When I rushed over, the big black bear had already died, and the wild boar was also injured, so I made up for it. Oh my daughter is really amazing, Jiang praised with a smile. I just saw the big black bear in your basket, and with a swoosh, they suddenly appeared. Did they come out of your little treasure chest? Jiang lowered her voice unconsciously and asked. When Jiang Zhiyue entered the yard just now, they saw only a wild boar, and then the big black bear and backpack suddenly appeared. Although I know my daughter has a small treasure chest, I can't help but feel curious and want to ask. Yes, but it seems like it can only hold so much, so I didn't put the wild boar inside. Jiang Zhiyue didn't say that she didn't put it because she thought the wild boar was dirty. After lunch, people began to feel sleepy, and the number of people walking in the village gradually decreased. They all rested at home, and it was at this time that Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai returned. The grain brought back this time is more than yesterday's grain, so they don't have to buy grain anymore. A few people worked together to stack the grain in the cellar, and the Jiang family looked at the full grain in the cellar, feeling a lot of peace in their hearts. The prey brought back by Jiang Zhiyue, except for the wild boar, 2 wild chickens, and the snake, were all loaded onto a cart and planned to be taken to the town to sell while the meat was still fresh. The wild boar was left to be smoked and stored as dried meat. Jiang Zhiyue also followed her to the town. This morning, when she was using a knife, she thought of going to the iron shop to buy some knives for the Jiang family to defend themselves. The material of the knives in her space was much better than the iron ones now, and not so much. Jiang Zhiyue didn't know where the iron shop in the town was, so she had to follow Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai to sell wild animals first. Jiang Yulai still went to the restaurant they often go to. The restaurant owner saw that Jiang Yuqing and his brothers had brought a bear and looked at it curiously. "You 2 brothers are so capable, you can even hit this thing." The shopkeeper stepped forward and touched the smooth hair of the black bear, marveling. "We also had the 2 brothers pick up the ready-made ones, and coincidentally, this bear ran into our trap. It was brought to you immediately," Jiang Yulai continued with a smile. "Ha ha ha, okay, then I'll take this bear in that basket of wild animals. The skin of this bear is quite intact, and I'll give you 100 taels of silver on this end. The remaining wild animals will still be priced at the previous price." "Do you think it's feasible?" said the shopkeeper, brushing his beard. "You should know that if he peels off the whole bear skin of this dog and sells it in a county or city, the price can double." "Okay, could you please ask the shopkeeper to come out and weigh this wild creature?" Jiang Yulai happily answered. With just 1 cup of tea, the business was settled. After Jiang Yulai took the silver and the 3 of them walked further away, they avoided the crowd and handed the silver to Jiang Zhiyue. They knew it was safer for her to put the silver in her little treasure chest than on them. Jiang Zhiyue took the silver and felt a bit amused. When she exposed the space a bit, she never expected the Jiang family to accept it so well and even learn to use it reasonably. Not far away, the 3 of them passed by a hu and saw several people standing inside. The one who was stuck at the bottom was an elderly man leaning on a cane with a friendly face. The few thugs stumbled on the ground with 1 foot and threatened, "Quickly hand over all the silver on your body, otherwise there will be your good fruit to eat." The old man still had a gentle expression and didn't get angry. He explained, "I haven't even brought any silver with me. If you want any silver, why don't you come with me to the inn to pick it up?" "Yoha, you're a fool to be me. I'm going to pick it up with you. If you don't take it out yourself, don't blame us for being impolite." The leading thug pushed the old man in anger. The crutch in the old man's hand slipped unsteadily from his palm, and he took 2 trembling steps back, slamming his back against the wall. Jiang Yuqing saw this situation and exclaimed urgently, "What are you doing? You guys!" A few thugs were startled and turned their heads to see only 2 seemingly weak men and a little girl, and burst into laughter. Jiang Zhiyue saw that Jiang Yuqing had already walked into the alley, and after exchanging a glance with Jiang Yulai, she also followed in. "Why didn't you see the robbery? Yo, this little lady looks good. Do you want to play with her brothers?" There is no government office in the town, so a few thugs are very reckless and have bullied many people in front of local snakes. The thug leader spoke and took a few steps forward, standing in front of Jiang Yuqing. He noticed that he looked up at him and angrily took 2 steps back. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Jiang Zhiyue, and he even used his hands to tease her greasy hair, thinking he was very handsome. All the little brothers behind him cheered and whistled. Jiang Yulai took a step in front of Jiang Zhiyue, not wanting those people's disgusting gazes on her. "Dare to block us, brothers. Let's have the little lady accompany us today to have a good and happy time." As soon as the words fell, a few thugs surrounded Jiang Zhiyue and the other 3 in the middle. A hint of anxiety flashed on the face of the old man who had fallen and hit the wall, wanting to stand firm and walk over. Jiang Zhiyue glanced over and saw only 6 people, each with a dull expression and no combat effectiveness at all. The thug leader walked up to Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai wanted to stop him, but they were blocked by others. The thug looked at Jiang Zhiyue's smooth face and wanted to reach out to touch the touch. Jiang Zhiyue's face looked very smooth, and it must be very comfortable to touch it. Jiang Zhiyue's expression turned cold as she grabbed his wrist and suddenly twisted it upwards. A crisp clicking sound accompanied by the screams of the thug leader. "You little slut, let me deal with you later," the thug said with a cold sweat on his headache, gritting his teeth. After speaking harshly, his other hand waved over. Tisk. Jiang Zhiyue easily grabbed his other hand. "The villain died from talking too much, you know. I can deal with you now." After taking off the other hand of the little thug, Jiang Zhiyue kicked him in the stomach and kicked him away. "Ah, my arm, my arm." The thug rolled his head on the ground and screamed in pain. "Hurry up, take off this little slut's arm for me." The other 5 hesitated a bit, as the woman looked like a fierce character. "A group of foodies, if we don't come up soon, we'll kill you all." The thug leader lay on the ground giving orders. 5 thugs gathered their strength and rushed towards Jiang Zhiyue, but 2 were stopped by Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai. Jiang Zhiyue looked at the 3 people rushing towards her without making any action. Just when they thought she was scared out of her wits, Jiang Zhiyue picked up one with one hand and threw it at the person rushing behind her. The 3 of them happened to fall beside the head of the thug. He angrily kicked them a few times and said, "Don't stand up yet, useless thing." The 3 of them could only endure the pain and rush forward again. Jiang Zhiyue directly caught them and beat them up, some turned into panda eyes, and some had blood flowing from their noses. The 3 of them were beaten to the point where they had no strength to fight back, and could only scream and use their hands to block their faces. Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai, seeing that Jiang Zhiyue was no longer in danger, felt relieved and vented their anger on the 2 people blocking their way. After a brutal beating, he threw several people together and piled them up in a pile. Jiang Zhiyue walked up to the old man and handed the cane she had picked up to him, asking, "Are you okay, old man?" "I'm fine, thank you very much, miss and the 2 knights." The old man arched his hand at them with a cane as a gesture of gratitude. Jiang Zhiyue smiled and said, "It's a piece of cake." The old man's face was gentle and he looked like an elegant person, which made people feel good about him. Jiang Yuqing looked at the old man and said, "Why don't we take you back?" The old man looked at Jiang Zhiyue and then at Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai behind her, and smiled gratefully, "Then trouble the 3 of you." The old man lived in an inn in the town, and when they were taking him back, they happened to meet a young man who was going out to find him. The young man treated the elderly with a respectful expression and said, "Sir." After thanking Jiang Zhiyue and the others, the young man had to give them money. "It's just a small gesture," Jiang Zhiyue politely declined and left with Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai. Perhaps it was because they had just done something good. Although they went to the iron shop to buy weapons and experienced some setbacks, they were able to successfully secure this order. In ancient times, the management of iron tools was very strict, and all the iron tools sold in iron shops were recorded. The 3 of them also sharpened their mouths and used their money-counting skills to get the blacksmith to agree to this business. As for whether he will sell the farm tools or iron pots in the newspaper, he must have a clear idea of it himself. Due to the delay in the town for so long, the sun had already set when the 3 of them arrived home. The aroma wafted out from the yard, which was the aroma of chicken soup. Jiang Zhiyue took a big sip of the aroma and enjoyed it. Jiang's sister-in-law has quite good cooking skills, among which Wang's cooking is the best. Jiang Zhiyue's cooking is average, and the food she makes can only be said to be edible. Her 2 hobbies in her spare time before were going to different places to eat delicious food and see beautiful men. The Jiang family's dinner today is a chicken stewed with mushrooms, a braised fish, a stir-fried seasonal vegetable, a cold century egg and a pot of laver shrimp soup. The main food is also thick millet porridge and a basket of white flour mantou. Compared to usual, this is already a top-notch meal. So fragrant, this meal was made by Aunt San, right? Jiang Zhiyue walked over and asked after washing her hands. You dog nose, you can smell the food anyone made, Jiang scolded with a smile. It seems that eating the food made by your aunt and me has wronged your stomach. There's no such thing as that. Mom and Aunt Air cook delicious food, but it's been a long time since I ate the food made by Aunt San. I miss it so much. Jiang Zhiyue quickly smiled and comforted her mother and Aunt Air's injured little soul. During the first 3 months of Xiaowang's pregnancy, the Jiang family stopped her from cooking on the stove, fearing that she would be too tired and harm the child. She felt guilty about not doing anything at home all day and started helping out in the kitchen after 3 months. However, she missed out on the ingredients today. The Jiang family was particularly satisfied with their food. Jiang Zhiyue thought of what happened this afternoon and also mentioned the training for them starting from tomorrow. Everyone had no objection to this, and Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai were even more eager to try Jiang Zhiyue's fierce beating in the afternoon. Now that Jiang Zhiyue has done something beyond their understanding, they have found a good reason for her in their hearts, which is that her dream grandfather taught her, and Jiang Zhiyue is happy to see it succeed. The next morning, Jiang Zhiyue took everyone who had also woken up early to exercise. Currently, the young Wang family in the Jiang family does not need to exercise. Jiang Yuchao and Daolong Erlang use their time to exercise because they still have to go to the town school. Even Mr. and Mrs. Jiang need to do simple exercises to strengthen their bodies. Fortunately, the second old man's body is relatively strong and can keep up with Jiang Zhiyue's rhythm. Days passed like this, and the training of the Jiang family had begun to pay off. Jiang Zhiyue began to teach them some 1.1 killing moves to defeat the enemy. After training day after day, it was mid-May and the water in the river below the mountain was almost bottoming out. Jiang Zhiyue's unease in her heart grew stronger and stronger, like a premonition that small animals would have before a disaster struck. She was particularly restless now. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Fear of Locust Disaster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Fear of Locust Disaster. It is now mid-May, and there is only over half a month left until the normal harvest time. Jiang Zhiyue had a hard time thinking but couldn't imagine why Chen Jizai and the people of Jiangjia village started to flee together in the original plot, whether it was an earthquake, a flood, or something else. However, no matter what, they must have left before the grain harvest, so the grain must be harvested in advance. In the end, she made up her mind to call the Jiang family together, with a somewhat heavy tone of advice. Grandpa, let's harvest the grain in advance. Harvest grain. The grain will be harvested in half a month, why do we harvest it now? Son asked with a puzzled expression. Although there was only half a month left until harvest, it would result in a significant loss of grain, at least 30.4% less. Thinking about it, Son felt heartbroken. Jiang Yuan thought of something and asked Jiang Zhiyue, did the old man from that dream tell you something again? Jiang Zhiyue shook her head. She was not clear about this matter, and if she continued to say what Grandpa had told her, she would reveal the truth. She pondered her wording and said, it's because I've been feeling uneasy these days and feel like something big is about to happen. We haven't had any rain since the beginning of winter last year. Even the river behind our village is now almost submerged, and locusts are prone to breeding in large numbers in this weather. If the Jiang family was taken aback. If there were a locust plague, they would have no harvest at all. Granddaughter, are you sure? Mrs. Jiang asked in a somewhat panicked tone. After asking, she gave a regretful slap. These were all stupid questions she had asked. How could her granddaughter know if it had happened? But now that we have harvested the grain, although we may lose 30.4%, the remaining 60.7% has been saved. Mrs. Jiang thought of it, and the other members of the Jiang family naturally also thought of it. In the end, they unanimously decided to harvest the grain in advance and starting from tomorrow. The Jiang family doesn't have much land, with 5 or 2 acres of good farmland and 3 acres of dry land. The Jiang family has a lot of land, so they can start harvesting tomorrow and finish it all in less than 2 days. It has been decided that the Jiang family is once again caught in another dilemma, whether they should tell the villagers about this matter or not. Finally, Mr. Jiang and Jiang Zhiyue went to Hengrong's house together to say that if they asked for a reason, it would be pushed onto Jiang Zhiyue's body, saying that it was his inference from the book and that maiden could not be exposed. And the 3 sisters-in-law of the Jiang family will each go back to their mother's house early tomorrow morning and try their best to persuade them to collect grain in advance. Hengrong's family in Jiang Zhiyue village had just finished their meal and planned to go back to their house to rest when they heard a knock on the door. Bang bang bang, here we go. The person who came to open the door was Jiang Zhiyue, the eldest son of Jiang Hengrong's family. He saw the people outside the door and quickly turned to let them in. Uncle Xingde, brother Yuchao, why are you 2 here at this time? Mr. Jiang's name is Jiang Kongqing, and he is of the same generation as Jiang Hengrong. He said, I'm here to discuss something with your father. Is he at home? At home, I just went inside for dinner. I'll go call him, Jiang Zhiyue said and quickly ran into the room. Jiang Hengrong's mansion. Mr. Jiang and Jiang Hengrong sat together, exchanged a few pleasantries, and then got to the main topic of today. A room full of people listening to the news brought by Mr. Jiang and Jiang Zhiyue was definitely a bolt from the blue for them. Brother, I have some confidence in this matter. We dare not casually inform you about the big and tender matter, right? Jiang Hengrong asked anxiously. I'm only 50% certain, after all, it's just my eldest son's inference based on years of studying, and I really can't guarantee anything. Mr. Jiang said, but the big guys are all from the countryside. If we decide to harvest grain in advance, we need to tell everyone the reason. Those who believe in it can also harvest it together. You have already made a decision. Jiang Hengrong asked in surprise. I thought they thought of this possibility and came to ask for their opinion, but they even made a good decision. With only 50% certainty, they dare to harvest grain. Is it because they have received some news in the town that they have not succeeded? Jiang Hengrong's heart is somewhat shaken. I'll tell the villagers about this tomorrow morning, but we can't control what they do, Jiang Hengrong replied. What Uncle Hengrong said is, let's just talk about this matter, and as for what to do, it's up to them, said Jiang Zhiyue. Jiang Zhiyue escorted Mr. Jiang and Jiang Zhiyue outside the door, and upon entering, he heard his mother talking to his father about this matter. What do they think about this? If we harvest the grain now, how much less will we lose? Jiang Hengrong's mother-in-law curled her lips, thinking that Jiang Zhiyue was probably going crazy towards them. She even said that being a scholar is not as clever as her. Jiang Hengrong gave his mother-in-law a sideways glance and ignored her, still feeling the conflict between heaven and humanity in his heart. He doesn't believe that Jiang Zhiyue dared to harvest the grain without any confidence. After Jiang Laozi and Jiang Zhiyue left Jiang Hengrong's house, they went to Jiang Kongda's older brother's house again. Upon hearing this news, they also didn't believe it. However, seeing Jiang Laozi's serious demeanor, they couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. In the end, they decided to follow Jiang Laozi to collect grain in advance. After all, there is still some to be collected, and what if there is no more to collect? The next morning, before breakfast, every household heard the sound of copper gongs. The village only struck this gong when it was time to notify. On the threshing ground, the villagers of Jiang Zhiyue village stood together in piles, whispering to each other to inquire about what had happened. What's Hengrong calling us over for? We haven't had breakfast yet, a woman asked the people around her. I don't know, just wait for Hengrong to say it. You can't just call us over, the person answered. Hengrong stood on a relatively high stone platform in front of the crowd, tapping the gong in his hand to signal them to quiet down. "Big guy, today I'm calling everyone out to talk about a life-threatening event," Jiang Hengrong said seriously. Hearing that life was at stake, everyone below turned their gaze and their voices of whispering disappeared. "What's going on?" someone couldn't help but ask anxiously. Hengrong struck the gong and drum again before saying, "Yesterday, Jiang Zhiyue came to my house and told me that there might be a locust plague in our area. Now, I'm saying this to encourage everyone to consider early grain harvest." This is also what Jiang Hengrong had planned last night. Even if there were no locust infestations, the families who had harvested the grain in advance would not blame him. However, if there were indeed locust infestations, he would have said about it. "Harvesting grain in advance, what are you joking about? Harvesting grain now can result in a loss of 40%. Yes, how could a locust plague occur? If I want to collect it from you, my family won't accept it." Sure enough, as soon as they heard the news, the crowd exploded, saying everything, but more of it was disbelief. Suddenly someone asked, "Hengrong, where did Jiang Zhiyue hear about this locust plague? We can't just say it for no reason." Jiang Hengrong repeated the same rhetoric that Jiang Zhiyue said yesterday. After listening to this explanation, there were different opinions among the crowd. Some said that Jiang Zhiyue was a master in the town who knew more than them, while others said that Jiang Zhiyue spread rumors, causing chaos below. Jiang Zhiyue originally wanted to see what the way of notifying the news was like here, so she came over with Mrs. Jiang and heard many people in the crowd pointing their fingers at her father. Mrs. Jiang also heard the slanderous words against Jiang Zhiyue and immediately shouted loudly, "Oh my, did my son put a knife around your neck to force you to harvest grain or what?" The old lady, who was scolded by Mrs. Jiang, looked embarrassed. She is from the same generation as Mrs. Jiang, and anyone is afraid of arguing about it. The old lady pinched her waist and said, "Who made your son spread rumors about what kind of locust plague is going to happen? We have lived peacefully here for a lifetime and have never heard of such a thing happening before." Jiang Zhiyue's expression was calm and there was not much fluctuation in her heart. However, the Jiang family was willing to share this news with them, so she couldn't let them spread rumors. She said, "We are only speculating about this matter and cannot provide any guarantee to the villagers. However, we are willing to speak out because of the affection of our neighbors. It is just a ridiculous statement that if something really happens, we cannot borrow food from them. Let alone our family's cold-blooded disregard for the friendship of the villagers." Jiang Hengrong originally wanted to sit back and enjoy the success, and let the villagers lead the fire to Jiang Zhiyue. Unexpectedly, both Mrs. Jiang and his maid came. "I can only add awkwardly with a hard face, Miss Jiang is right. We just told everyone about this matter. Would you like to watch everyone's own show? We don't force it. Jiang Zhiyue gave him a cold glance, "Don't think she didn't know. What Hengrong just said was to lead the spear to their house." After a moment of silence in the crowd, someone said, "Miss Jiang is right. It was kind of Jiang Zhiyue to tell us about this. As for whether you are willing to accept it or not, it's not up to you." Some people thought what he said was good and quickly agreed. Zhou and Jiang Zhilan stood at the edge of the crowd, hearing everyone start praising Jiang Zhiyue. They felt very unhappy because of the incident a few days ago. The villagers avoided her mother and daughter like snakes and scorpions, and they also hated them in their hearts. Zhou said, "Do you have to allocate the losses to the big guys when we harvest the grain in advance?" Zhou's words hit the heart of most people, and they were also hesitant. If they didn't accept it, they were afraid of locust infestations, and if they received it, they were afraid of no locust infestations. If Zhou's words were like this, wouldn't they all be able to avoid it? Immediately, a few people agreed. Song Furong couldn't bear to look at them and pointed to those who said they wanted the Jiang family to compensate for the losses. She said, "They all say that people are invincible without face. I see that you have no face or skin. How dare you say such things? Why should they compensate you for your food? Do you like to harvest or not? Anyway, my family will harvest along with me. If there is a disaster, you will regret it. After Song Furong finished speaking, she walked over and took Mrs. Zhang's hand, then walked out of the crowd together. She needed to inquire more and see when their family would harvest food. She had to follow closely. The son of Song Furong's family, Jiang Nian, also studied with Jiang Zhiyue at the town school. Every time he returned, he praised Jiang Fuzi for being so powerful. She also had a good relationship with the Zhang family, and she had already believed her words 60 or 70%. Zhang's sister-in-law also went back to her mother's house to talk about this matter. Jiang Yun accompanied Xiao Wang to the neighboring Zhang family village early in the morning. Zhang and Xiao Wang went smoothly on their side, both willing to gamble with the Jiang family, but Sun was quite angry at her parents. Zhang's family, if I don't come back once in 800 years, I'll just come back and take this little thing. Du Mutin, with a sarcastic expression on her face, reached out and grabbed the basket that Sun was carrying. She opened it and saw many eggs and dozens of fruits that couldn't be seen, still unsatisfied. Mrs. Jiang thought that Zhang and her sister-in-law had not returned home for a long time, so she took the same amount of eggs and loquats with her. Both Zhang and Xiao Wang's families received gifts and felt that their daughter was doing well at her husband's house. Only Du Mutin, who sold her as a commodity, would dislike bringing back too little. Although he said that, Du Mutin still allowed Sun Shi to enter after collecting the things. Du Mutin walked behind with a basket on her shoulder and asked, "What are you doing back here? Our place has been dry for a long time, and my man's brother is afraid that there will be a locust plague in the future, so he came back to tell you." Sun said calmly. If she hadn't cared about that little bit of affection, she wouldn't have wanted to come back at all. When she married the Jiang family, she was half sold and half married. In order to get a few more taels of silver, she even forced her to sign the contract of sale. However, later on, Sun was very fortunate to have this promissory note. After she got married, Du Mutin and her son came to visit every now and then to catch the autumn breeze, which made the Jiang family use the promissory note as a pretext to forcefully block them back. In the end, she demanded a full 10 taels of silver from the Jiang family, and her second sister, who was sold to the town clerk's mansion, was only 13 taels of silver. She knew that the Jiang family had almost spent most of their wealth when they married her into the family, and that Jiang Zhiyue missed the opportunity to participate in the second round after failing. Therefore, most of the reason for being good to Jiang Zhiyue was also to compensate the wealthy family. My brain was kicked by a donkey, and there was a locust plague. Why didn't he say that silver would fall from the sky? Du Mutin sneered. Seeing that Sun had nothing else to say, Du Mutin began to drive people away and said, "All right, if it's okay, you can leave. Eating lunch here is a waste of food. Remember to bring more eggs next time. Your brother likes to eat this." Sun's eyes turned red with anger, and she clenched her fists and rushed to Du Mutin. She snatched the basket from her hand, not caring if the eggs inside would break, and fell to the ground in one fell swoop. "If you love to eat eggs, let your good son earn by his abilities." After saying that, he walked out of the courtyard with a basket in hand. Du Mutin also didn't expect that Sun, who used to beat and scold, would dare to come up and grab the basket. She easily got her hands on it. After realizing it, she wanted to beat her like before. But when she saw the broken eggs on the ground, she quickly squatted down to hold them, shouting and cursing incessantly. Sun also took the opportunity to leave the yard. "You damn bitch, if I don't kill you next time, I should strangle you when I first gave birth to you." Sun walked out of the yard for a long time, and his ears still echoed with the shouts and curses of Du Mutin. Sun felt that all her good luck in this life had been used to meet the Jiang family, a large family. Fortunately, her mother-in-law was rational and heard about her mother's reputation. She wanted so much silver, so she decisively decided to terminate her marriage contract and wrote a suicide contract, saying that it had nothing to do with the Zhao family anymore. Poor her second sister, she died shortly after being carried to the Yuanwei mansion. Upon hearing the news, Du Mutin felt that she had not been able to gain any more benefits. Without further thought, Sun wiped away a tear and angrily left, thinking that she wouldn't be this mother in the future. On the side of Jiang Zhiyue village, not long after Song Furong and Mrs. Jiang left, the crowd gradually dispersed. Some people hurriedly go home to discuss, while others disdain it and think it is absolutely impossible for this to happen. The Jiang family disregarded everyone's opinions and rolled up their sleeves to start harvesting. When Sun returned to the Jiang family village, he adjusted his emotions and took a sickle to help. With the concerted efforts of the wealthy, the work was scorching hot. Those who were watching couldn't sit still long ago, and they saw that the Hengrong family had started harvesting in the fields. Many people also ran home to get sickles. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Locust Transit, No Grass Grows. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Locust Transit, No Grass Grows. When several households in Jiang Zhiyue village started collecting grain, many were watching. Perhaps it was driven by this atmosphere, or perhaps it was because they were really afraid of something happening, and the next day they joined several households who had received grain in advance. Several men from the Jiang family were responsible for harvesting rice in the field. Jiang Zhiyue followed Mrs. Jiang, Zhang, and Sun to take the harvested rice to the threshing ground to shell and dry it. When Jiang Zhiyue was holding rice, she took advantage of people's lack of attention and filled a lot of space. When she arrived at the threshing ground, she avoided people and took it out. The Jiang family discovered Jiang Zhiyue's small movements and even helped her cover them up. Jiang Zhiyue chuckled inwardly, feeling that the news of revealing some space was a wise decision, and indeed, it was much more convenient to do things. On the third day at noon, the scorching sun still hung high in the sky, and soon after, black clouds drifted up from the sky, blocking the scorching sun. The people who are drying the grain on the threshing ground quickly bring the grain home, afraid that the rain may wet the hard-earned grain. In just 15 minutes, heavy rain poured down. Some people are fortunate to have harvested the grain, otherwise the rice would have sprouted on the ears in this heavy rain. The person who confiscated the grain felt panicked, but couldn't wipe away his face. The duck could only grit its teeth and say, "I can't say it will rain for a while." After drinking enough water, the rice can still produce a few pounds more grain. You should harvest the grain ahead of time, and then regret it. The heavy rain did not last for too long, and in the middle of the afternoon, the rain gradually stopped. However, the sky remained gray and heavy, weighing on people's hearts. Before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the sky became even darker and there was a buzzing sound. Jiang Zhiyue stood in the yard and looked up, seeing large flying insects flying from afar. She reacted and loudly reminded, "The locusts are here, close the door quickly, and the cellar entrance is also blocked." Jiang Yuqing took Daolong and Erlang to the cellar, covered it with a lid and covered it with several layers of oilcloth, with another layer of soil covering it. The others quickly returned to their respective rooms and closed the doors. When they saw locusts flying in, they quickly padded and gathered in the hall. Mr. Jiang stood by the window with a cigarette bag in his hand and sighed, "Hey, what's wrong with those who confiscate food? I have tried to persuade everything, but these days he has seen that the number of households collecting grain is less than 1/3 of the residents in Jiang Zhiyue village. It's not your turn to worry, I told you in advance that you would like to help anyone come to borrow grain," Mrs. Jiang reminded. "I have a plan in my heart," Mr. Jiang frowned and took a puff of his cigarette, speaking heavily. Can he not count it in his heart? There are hundreds of households, big and small, in Jiang Zhiyue village. If he borrows one, he will come to the second one. How can he borrow so much food then? He lent this grain to someone else, so the few kids in his family would have to go hungry. Although he is kind-hearted, it is not difficult to carry it clearly, and it is precisely because he can see through that he feels uncomfortable. At this moment, the fields in Jiang Zhiyue village were in chaos, with constant cries accompanied by the sound of locusts flapping their wings. After the locusts attached themselves to the rice stalks, they began to gnaw at an extremely fast speed. The people who confiscated the crops wanted to snatch food from the locusts' mouths, but if they stepped on the fields that had just rained, they would sink in and there was no time to harvest. Various cries and cries mixed in the field, and in Jiang Hengrong's field, he slapped his wife's face. "It's all you, I insist on only receiving half of the grain. Now it's good, there's nothing left." Jiang Hengrong's mother-in-law was slapped to the ground and looked at the man who hit her in shock. She collapsed and shouted, "It's all because of what you said. We were afraid that without locust infestations, we would lose out on all the grain. We only collected half of the grain in the field. Now it's my fault. You didn't agree to this before." Jiang Hengrong's face turned green and white, and he kicked the woman sitting on the ground. His mother also stood up and fought with him. The same situation also happened to others. Seeing Hengrong and his mother in-law fighting each other, they seemed to have found an outlet to vent their anger and a reason to evade responsibility, shifting blame to their loved ones around them. And the people who had collected the grain and wanted to come out and take a look at the situation were dumbfounded by the miserable situation outside. At this moment, if we don't hurry up and grab a few more bundles of grain to go home, why did we start fighting on our own? The people who could have snatched up a few days of food missed the opportunity, and the locusts ate up everything here and moved on to the next place. The troublemaker looked at the empty field and began to sit on the ground crying. Some people began to feel grateful for the early harvest of grain after being advised. And the area affected by locust infestations is not only Jiang Zhiyue village, but also half of the entire Changdang king's fiefdom has been affected by locust infestations. The people are crying and howling, and the county government gate is tightly closed. They dare not stand up until they receive instructions from above. Jiang family, Jiang Zhiyue recounted what had just happened outside, and everyone fell silent. Seeing everyone silent, Jiang Zhiyue also understood their feelings, but she also knew that there wasn't much time left for them to feel sad. She said, "Tomorrow morning, Uncle San and I will go to the county to inquire about the situation. Don't go up the mountain, let's exercise at home. If anyone wants to come and ask for food, they can go straight out." Listening to Jiang Zhiyue's serious voice, everyone nodded heavily. Although we have just suffered from a locust plague today, and each household has not yet cut off their food supply, it is difficult to guarantee that no one will be malicious and blame them for confiscating their food. After finishing speaking, they dispersed separately, but it's unclear how many people can sleep soundly tonight. The next morning, after having a simple breakfast, Jiang Zhiyue drove the cart from home. There was no notice from the town school, but Jiang Yuchao and Jiang Lang still wanted to go, just in time for a ride. This is Jiang Zhiyue's first time visiting the county town, and the bustling scene on the streets is unimaginable. Yesterday, there was a locust plague, and the impact of this disaster has not yet spread here. "Uncle San, let's go to the county government office," Jiang Zhiyue sat behind and said. "Okay." At this time, many people who rushed from the towns below had already gathered in front of the county government office overnight, but the door of the county government office was tightly closed, and no one opened it no matter how people outside shouted. More and more people gathered outside, and some began to incite the crowd to join forces and break open the door of the county government. "We were hit by a disaster, but the county magistrate hid inside without seeing anyone, pointing out that he might still be eating spicy food. Let's knock open the door and ask him to give us an explanation." Someone stood in the middle of the crowd and shouted. Right, knock the door open and let the county magistrate open the warehouse to release grain." More and more people responded and began to excitedly push forward. The gate was overwhelmed and began to make loud bangs. Suddenly, the door was opened from the inside, and several yamen runners with long spears stood at the door blocking the crowded people who wanted to enter. "Silence, everyone listen to me for a few words." A voice came from behind the yamen runner, and Jiang Zhiyue stood on the ox cart, looking inside. She was the county magistrate with a round belly wearing a black hat. Seeing the county magistrate come out, the people instinctively remained afraid. The anger that had just been stirred up dissipated a bit, and the crowd gradually quieted down. "I know that the crops in the field were plagued by locusts yesterday, but this is only the second day. I also need to report to the capital in order to have food for you, isn't it?" The county magistrate with a loose tone said, "If anyone causes trouble before this, be careful and take them all to jail. Master Qing Tian, you must save us. If we run out of food, our family will run out of food in half a month." A woman with gray hair knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the county magistrate. Intermittent people knelt down and begged incessantly. The county magistrate impatiently glanced out from behind the crowd and exclaimed, "I understand. Let's all step back." The doors slowly closed amidst the pleading of the crowd, and Jiang Zhiyue glanced at the people kneeling on the ground, feeling helpless but unable to bear it. She has the ability to provide food to solve this crisis, but that will only expose her to danger. She finally had a chance to start over, and she wanted to be safe with the Jiang family. Before she had enough ability to protect herself and the Jiang family, she couldn't be stubborn. She couldn't bear to turn her head and told Jiang Yulai to leave. There was no useful information obtained in the county town, so Jiang Zhiyue and Jiang Yulai had to go back. However, she had a vague premonition in her heart that the court would not open granaries to store grain. As she thought, today's court has become a mess. "Wu Dynasty Palace, if you all have nothing to do, please leave the court," said the emperor sitting on the dragon chair. "Your Majesty, I request that the crown prince be appointed as the crown prince," said an old minister in a deep voice. "Yes, Your Majesty, in order to stabilize the country and society, it is better to establish the crown prince as early as possible. The eldest prince is the eldest son and is honest, and virtuous. I believe that the eldest prince should be appointed as the crown prince. The difference is that although the eldest prince is the eldest son, he is not orthodox. The 11th prince is the legitimate heir of the empress, and I believe that the 11th prince should be appointed as the crown prince. However, the 11th prince is too young to bear the burden of the country. With many sons, it is natural for the emperor to choose the most capable prince as the crown prince." For a moment, there was chaos in the court, and now there are 13 princes who have not died yet. Except for the youngest 2 princes, most of the other princes have people standing in line, but there are also people who remain silent and wait for the opportunity. Several princes were at the forefront of the courtiers with varying expressions. Some were not at all excited, as if the matter had nothing to do with them, but others quietly looked up to observe the emperor's expression. "Bastard!" The person sitting on the dragon chair above angrily rebuked, throwing a fold in his hand onto the head of the first courtier below who opened his mouth to ask for the crown prince's position. The courtier's legs softened and he knelt down on the main hall. The few people who had just spoken also knelt down in fear. "The emperor, calm down." The courtiers all lowered their heads. "I haven't died yet, so I want to become a crown prince." "Are you cursing me or are you thinking of changing your master?" the emperor angrily asked. "I am loyal to your majesty, and I dare not have any ulterior motives." Yi, the courtier, quickly expressed his loyalty and dared not mention the matter of appointing the crown prince again. The emperor was extremely angry and took a few deep breaths. The eunuch next to him, who was very eye-catching, bent forward and handed over the exquisite ivory box in his hand. "Your Majesty, the elixir." The eunuch's sharp voice echoed in the hall. The emperor put the elixir into his mouth and swallowed it. In the next moment, he felt a refreshing sensation in his body and his face turned slightly rosy, and his mood improved slightly. With this miraculous elixir, he can live forever. This world has been his for generations, and a group of bastards always think of becoming a crown prince. He stood up and shook his sleeves, saying in a loud voice, "The matter of establishing the crown prince cannot be discussed again. I have my own plan and will withdraw from court." Speaking of Jiang Zhiyue's side, although she couldn't hear any real news, she wasn't too disappointed. After an hour, the two finally returned to the Jiang family village, and at this moment, the Jiang family's door was particularly lively. No matter where she gets married, Jiang Shaoqing is always the daughter who crawled out of my belly. If she can still refuse to recognize me as a mother, let her help her younger brother order some food. Du Mutin in the crowd shouted confidently. Standing beside her was a middle-aged couple, namely Jiang Xiaoming, the eldest son of Du Mutin, and his wife Yuha. On the Jiang family's side, Sun Shi, who had a palm print on her face, was protected by Jiang Yuqing behind her. The brothers Erlang, Sanlang, and Sailang also stood in front of her and fiercely stared at Du Mutin, preventing her from coming up and hitting anyone again. "I'm sorry, why should I give you my food?" Mrs. Jiang, as the first combat leader, was scolding Du Mutin. The persimmon was about to be picked and pinched, but Du Mutin just scolded Sun, "Let your mother be hungry, and you won't be afraid to choke when you eat." After marrying into the Jiang family for so many years, Sun's backbone has already become quite tough. She walked out from behind the crowd and said, "I didn't tell you in advance when I received the grain earlier, but it's still okay. Our family's grain is for you. What do we eat? You sold your daughter so much silver and went to the town to buy grain on your own. You dead girl, if you dare to talk back, it's really against you." Du Mutin shouted and cursed before running over to tear at Sun's hair, and Sun refused to be outdone and fought back. Mrs. Jiang and Mrs. Zhang quickly stepped forward to stop her. Du Mutin had taken over Sun's nominal mother, and if this really started, it would not be good for her reputation and would also affect the few kids in the family when it came to matchmaking. "Xiaoming, Yuha, come and help your mother quickly." Du Mutin couldn't straighten her waist as her hair was torn, so she could only shout at the top of her throat. Jiang Xiaoming looked at the man from the Jiang family who was watching closely and pushed Yuha hard. "I didn't see our mother getting beaten, what are you doing here?" Sun caught Yuha who was pushed in and beat her up. This woman was not good either. After getting married to Jiang Xiaoming, she kept encouraging Du Mutin and Jiang Xiaoming to come and catch the autumn breeze. Sun directly vented her resentment towards Du Mutin on Yuha. Jiang Zhiyue squeezed into the crowd and stood next to the Jiang family, noticing that Jiang Yuchao and Dalong Erlang, who were supposed to be in town, were also at home, but now was not the time to inquire. Jiang Xiaoming noticed Jiang Zhiyue walking in, her eyes lit up, and she looked up and down with a narrowed expression. Jiang Zhiyue noticed an uncomfortable gaze and looked up to see Jiang Xiaoming's lewd gaze. Her sharp gaze glared at him, but Jiang Xiaoming seemed unaware and still stared at him with a narrowed expression. Jiang Zhiyue's expression turned cold, and her mental strength rushed towards him. Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang also noticed the situation here and walked over in 3 or 2 steps, each of whom punched him. Jiang Xiaoming suddenly felt a sharp pain in his mind that left him with no chance to react, so he could only lie flat and let himself be beaten. After getting angry enough, Mrs. Jiang and others walked back to the door. The 3 people lying on the ground looked very miserable. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Only helping our own people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Only helping our own people. Du Mutin's clothes and hair looked a bit messy, and Yuha was a bit more miserable than her. However, Sun Shi didn't have any worries and slapped her a lot. Jiang Xiaoming lay on the ground and looked lifeless. Just now, Jiang Dalong and Jiang Erlang were so fierce that they dared to covet their sister and deserved to be beaten. Du Mutin turned her head and saw her son lying on the ground, not knowing if he was dead or alive. She cried bitterly and said, "Ah, I want to fight with you." After finishing speaking, they found the direction of Xiao Wang standing beside them and rushed towards her. The Jiang family was startled, with some protecting Xiao Wang while others ran towards Du Mutin, intending to stop her. The child in Xiao Wang's belly is only 4 months old, and it's hard to say if he can still stay with such a bump. Jiang Zhiyue felt angry in her heart, grabbed the little Wang next to her, and then kicked Du Mutin who was hitting her. With a loud bang, Du Mutin fell to the ground and lifted the dust. When Jiang Zhiyue just kicked someone, she also confiscated her strength. The killing power of this kick can be imagined. Du Mutin coughed several times on the ground and spat out a big mouthful of blood. The villagers who were watching were scared back 2 steps by Jiang Zhiyue's fierce behavior, and the crowd fell into a eerie silence. Suddenly, the sound of the wheels rolling and a particularly excited sound disrupted the tranquility. "We're all around, milk. Big brother and I brought 2 flatbed carts, and we'll bring more grain back from the loser's house." The person shouting was Jiang Xiaoming's second son, Jiang Zhongmao. The crowd fell silent, and Jiang Zhiyue sneered as she looked at the 3 people lying on the ground in different positions. The crowd automatically gave way, and Jiang Zhongmao and his elder brother Jiang Zhongsheng pushed the cart in. The onlookers looked at the 2 wooden carts pushed by the Jiang brothers with mixed emotions. What they had in mind was that they even pushed 2 carts. It is estimated that even after the 2 carts were pulled, the Jiang family would run out of food. It can only be said that the Sun family is really shameless. It was indeed right to hit them. The Jiang brothers were stunned when they saw Jiang Xiaoming lying on the ground, foaming at his mouth, Yuha's face swollen from the fan, and Du Mutin with blood at the corner of his mouth. The 2 of them put down the cart and rushed over to help Jiang Xiaoming, who was closest to them, up. "Dad, what's going on? How did you get beaten up like this?" Jiang Zhongsheng shook Jiang Xiaoming's head and asked. Jiang Xiaoming's brain began to ache as soon as he wanted to speak, so he had to close his mouth. Unfortunately, Jiang Zhongsheng kept shaking and his eyes rolled over, causing him to faint. "Losing money, my dad came to fetch food from you. He was beaten at your doorstep. Why don't you stop him?" Jiang Zhongsheng couldn't understand and vented his anger on Sun Shi. The Jiang brothers have not seen Sun Shi a few times before, and they have been exposed to the idea of calling her a loser so confidently. Sun spat on the ground and said, "Oh my God, if he hadn't fainted, I could have slapped him 2 more times." Jiang Zhongmao looked at Sun in disbelief and angrily said, "You loser, you are indeed as heartless as what I said." Sun rolled her eyes at him, listening to what he said with no waves in her heart. If she had longed for that kind of family affection before, she would still be sad. Now that she has figured it out, she will live a good life in the Jiang family. "Oh my dear grandson, it's his family who beat us. You too should avenge your father quickly," Du Mutin shouted while lying on the ground. The 2 of them suddenly rushed towards Sun with a surge of blood in their hearts, without even thinking about it. In their hearts, Sun is a loser who can be beaten or scolded, and she definitely wouldn't dare to fight back. Jiang Zhiyue cursed foolishly in her heart and said to Jiang Daolong and Jiang Erlang, "Big brother, give them a lesson. Don't beat them up. The 3 on the ground will have to be pulled back later. What will happen if they also boost their memory and insult our family at the entrance of our Jiang family?" She still supported the frightened little Wang, otherwise she would have personally taught them a lesson, but she also happened to take a look at the recent training situation of her elder brother and second brother. "All right." Jiang Daolong and Jiang Erlang exchanged a glance and walked to the opposite side of the Jiang brothers, clenching their fists. In no time, the 2 were beaten and shouting loudly, constantly begging for mercy. After being beaten up, the 2 brothers of the Jiang family became much more honest. They were very timid and acted clumsily. At the request of the Jiang family, they lifted Jiang Xiaoming and the other 3 onto the cart and pushed them away like flying. The onlookers were stunned, and some who wanted to take the opportunity to borrow some food from the Jiang family also suppressed their thoughts. Mr. Jiang stood up and said, "If you don't have anything to do, let's just leave." If there are too many household chores, we won't leave everyone to drink tea. After speaking, he followed behind the Jiang family and entered the courtyard, with the gate closed, blocking the view from outside. In the yard, Mrs. Jiang thought about the situation just now and said with some sadness, "There are many people in our family who want to come and grab food. Your father's family is small, and I don't know if there's anything wrong." She was talking about Wang's father, Wang Fugue, who was also her elder brother. The Wang family had a thin heir, so her mother gave birth to her eldest brother and 2 children. Her sister Law also left early, leaving behind the young Wang family and another son, Wang Fengshou. When it comes to Wang Fengshou, his offspring will become even thinner, and now he only has 1 child, Wang Hao, so the Wang family only has 4 members. There is no one at home who owns the farm. When they were collecting grain, the villagers must have seen it too. If there were any accidents, Jiang Zhiyue thought for a moment about the current situation and suggested, "Why don't we pick them up first? We can still fit in if we squeeze together. Anyway, I haven't lived here for long, and the people can't wait for the government to open warehouses and release grain anymore. It's estimated that there will be chaos in a few days." She turned her gaze to her mother Zhang again and asked, "Mom, let's go to Grandma's house soon and tell them about the current situation to see what their plans are." "Okay," Zhang said, and a big stone in her heart also fell to the ground. Although her mother's family is not small, if the villagers really put their minds into it, they may not be able to resist. After finishing these words, Jiang Zhiyue recounted the situation she saw in the county and said, "I think the court should not be able to consider the situation here for a moment. We need to be prepared to leave at any time." Everyone nodded solemnly. Without time to rest, Jiang Yulai immediately went out to Wangjia village, and Jiang Zhiyue also went to Zhangjia village with the Zhang family. When Jiang Zhiyue returned in the evening, the yard was bustling with activity and a few unfamiliar faces. It seemed that Jiang Yulai had already brought back the people over there. Upon seeing Jiang Zhiyue and Zhang's return, Mrs. Jiang quickly approached and asked, "What's going on? What did your mother say?" Zhang said, "I have told my mother and her team that if there is any situation, they will definitely come to see us. Please don't worry." "Okay, then I can rest assured," Mrs. Jiang patted her heart and said. Then he continued, "The third one came back a bit earlier than you. They are few people and afraid of anything. When the third one went to collect his things, he immediately followed over." "That's good, no matter what happens, we can do it all," Zhang continued with a smile. More than 10 days have passed since the Locust plague, and with the appeasement of the county magistrate, the emotions of the people have gradually stabilized from their initial anxiety. However, there is still no news of opening warehouses to release grain, and instead, another major event has occurred. An earthquake occurred to the north of the fiefdom of King Changdeng, affecting 2 counties and resulting in severe casualties. A series of disasters occurred one after another, causing panic to intensify among the people. They ran to the county town again to request the county magistrate to open warehouses and release grain. In the end, the Yamen killed several people who led the trouble, which was considered a forced suppression of the situation. But the resentment in the hearts of the people has risen one level, planting roots and sprouting in their hearts. After such a long wait, many people realized that the court might not even open warehouses to store grain, and began to go to grain shops to buy grain. But now the price of grain is also increasing day by day. Brown rice, which used to only cost a dozen yuan per kilogram, now costs 30 yuan to buy. In order to survive, even if the price is high, there are still many people who buy grain, but some people work hard to support them, thinking that the court will definitely not ignore them. The news of the soaring grain prices spread throughout the surrounding villages and towns, and everyone in Jiangjia village naturally knew about it. The food in the town has become more expensive, aren't there still those families who harvest food in advance? They turned their minds to these families who received grain in advance. The Hengrong family dared not make any plans, and their family only received half of the grain. After much thought, they eventually made plans for Jiang Zhiyue's family. Jiang Zhiyue's family used to not have to pay taxes in previous years, and this year they have collected a few acres of grain. How could his family eat all these grains? If you ask me, we are all villagers, so he should help us, said Jiang Zhiyue, standing under the big tree at the village head. There are two major households in Jiang Zhiyue village, one with the surname Jiang and the other with the surname Jiang. However, the residents with the surname Jiang moved in later, and there are also a few with other surnames who moved in later. The people around him knew from what he said that he probably hadn't heard of what happened at the Jiang family yesterday, otherwise how dare he have such an idea. Someone immediately said to him, "It's not easy to mess with a few young boys from the Jiang Zhiyue family. Yesterday, a member of the Sun family came over and wanted some food, but they all took them away. That girl from the Jiang family is also impressive, kicking everyone away with one kick. Who in our village didn't know that the Sun family had already broken ties with her mother's family, but we have been with their fellow villagers for decades, and we can't refuse to give them this face." Jiang Zhiyue didn't take what he said to heart, and since there were many people going, would his family dare not take out the food? Some people think Jiang Zhiyue's words make sense. Anyway, Jiang Zhiyue's family can't finish their food, so why not give them some? A few people immediately agreed and went to the Jiang family to force them to hand over the food. A large group of people walked towards the Jiang family, attracting many people to follow and take a look. It's been a few days now, and every household has run out of food. If Jiang Zhiyue's family gives them food, why not give them some points to see people? So as people gathered more and more, by the time they reached the gate of the Jiang family, the number had already reached nearly 100. When they just passed by Hengrong's house, Jiang Hengrong's mother-in-law learned about the situation. She told Jiang Hengrong about it and said, "Let them only focus on their own lives and not let everyone collect the food. They deserve to rob his family's food." When she said this, she had already forgotten that they confiscated the food because they didn't want to believe it. Jiang Hengrong crossed his legs and glanced out, but didn't say anything. With a few loud bangs, the door of the Jiang family trembled when it was knocked on. Jiang Zhiyue stood up and opened the door, only to see a crowd of people blocking the door. In the past 2 days, Jiang Zhiyue and a few members of the Jiang family went to the mountains to catch a lot of prey and came back, intending to smoke, roast, and store them. When she opened the door, she was holding a kitchen knife that had just been used to cut meat. "What's up?" Jiang Zhiyue coldly glanced at the crowd outside, but she had already guessed in her heart what they were here for. The person knocking on the door saw the shiny kitchen knife in Jiang Zhiyue's hand, and then thought of the incident where she kicked someone away yesterday. They were so scared that they took 2 steps back and stuttered, "Jiang." Jiang Zhiyue said he wanted to see you. After speaking, he dodged to the side and exposed Jiang Zhiyue behind him. "What's up with you?" Jiang Zhiyue asked the man with triangular eyes in front of her, who looked not as tall as her. Jiang Zhiyue tilted his head and said arrogantly, "As for your man, let a woman come out to talk. I'll discuss the food matter with your father." Speaking with her head held high, she wanted to enter from Jiang Zhiyue's side. Jiang Zhiyue's face darkened as she raised her kitchen knife and placed it horizontally around his neck. Feeling the cold sensation emanating from his neck, Jiang Zhiyue was so frightened that he stopped and carefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He took half a step back, and Jiang Zhiyue's hand also extended forward. The sharp blade cut through his skin, and small blood droplets rolled down his neck. Jiang Zhiyue was too scared to move anymore, but her body kept shaking like a sieve. "If there's something to say, it's easy to say. Take down the knife first," Jiang Zhiyue said with a mournful expression, feeling regretful for standing in front of him. He should have stirred up trouble in the crowd, and I'm afraid they won't be able to fight so many people. Jiang Zhiyue looked at the blade attached to Jiang Zhiyue's skin with disdain, and said that she needed to wash the blade well later, otherwise it wouldn't be useful anymore. She withdrew the knife and saw that Jiang Zhiyue wanted to run back into the crowd, so she helped him and kicked him out. Why, you all come to see us like him for something. Jiang Zhiyue scanned the crowd one by one. The person she was staring at felt a chill in their neck and quickly shook their head, taking a few steps back from the crowd. There are still many people standing there, although they are afraid, they still feel that the Jiang family is really taking advantage of so many of them. A middle-aged man with a pleasing smile on his face in the crowd said, "It's been so long since the Locust plague, and everyone's home is feeling a bit out of touch. Look, can you help out a bit?" He dare not regard Jiang Zhiyue as one of the women in the family. This girl is favored by the Jiang family and he is also talented. It seems that everyone has forgotten what I once said, Jiang Zhiyue said casually. Her reminder reminded many people of what she had said before. When we can't borrow grain, don't say that our family doesn't care about the love of the countryside. Someone's face lit up, and at that time, no one knew what locust plague would really happen. Some people think that this was done by the Jiang family improperly. A woman in the crowd with a suspicious eye said, "Everyone is digging and eating in the soil. How can we understand those words?" If Jiang Zhiyue said a few more words, we would definitely listen to him. Yeah, I think you just can't stand the villagers' kindness and say to hide half. Now that the big guy is going hungry, your family needs to take out the grain and share it with us. The speaker was Zhou, who was at odds with the Jiang family. Jiang Zhiyue sneered, and the other people who came out of the yard were also surprised when they heard this. What a big face. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Refugees siege cities and grab grains. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Refugees siege cities and grab grains. Upon hearing these words, Sun mocked and said, "We can't learn your generosity. We can share everything, even our own men can share it with others." Upon hearing this, everyone covered their mouths and chuckled. There is a widow at the head of the neighboring village, and there are many sneaky men running towards her house in several nearby villages, who have been seen many times. She caught Zhou's man on her own, and the two of them started fighting directly in front of the widow's door. When Zhou wanted to hit the widow, she even made her man slap her twice. For a while, people who didn't deal with Zhou would mock her about this. Zhou's angry face turned red, and the two of them started to curse each other with guns and sticks. A few people in the crowd who genuinely wanted to borrow some food couldn't help but feel anxious when they saw Zhou scolding again. Finally, a few women covered her mouth and pulled back. The middle-aged man who had just spoken had no choice but to stand up and say, "We know we shouldn't come, but our food is almost depleted. Jiang Zhiyue is kind-hearted, so please help us. Yeah, your girl was in poor health when she was a child. We all added cloth to make her 100 family clothes. We don't want you to give us food for free, we'll pay for it." Right, we'll pay for it, the person said awkwardly with a smile, but can this price be a bit cheaper than the grain shop? The current grain prices are 2 or 3 times the normal grain prices, and some people cannot afford to buy grain even if they want to. Jiang Zhiyue saw his daughter give him a look and understood that it was making him blush, so he stood beside her and said, "Our family also knows everyone's difficulties, but our food is only that, and we can only squeeze out a portion of the food." Jiang Zhiyue glanced at the few who had just shouted loudly and asked them to take out all the food and give it to them for free, then continued. "We are willing to help, but that doesn't mean we are a great philanthropist, so we only sell this grain to a portion of the people." Jiang Zhiyue immediately stood up and said, "Except for the ones who follow us to harvest grain, we don't sell the rest of you. And you. We don't sell either." The ones pointed out by Jiang Zhiyue happened to be the ones that just incited the crowd to stir up trouble. Zhou happened to be among these people, and upon hearing these words, she exclaimed, "Why don't you sell it to me? You avenge yourself in public." "Just because this grain belongs to our family," Zhang sternly retorted without showing any mercy. She hasn't forgotten about Jiang Zhiyue pushing her daughter down the river. Those who want to buy grain can go home now and prepare silver and grain bags. It won't be too late, Jiang Zhiyue said before returning to the yard with the Jiang family. Some people outside ran home happily, while others stood outside cursing. Soon, the news that Jiang Zhiyue's family was willing to sell grain to everyone spread in Jiang's village. Even those who had collected grain came to watch the excitement. At this moment, in the courtyard of the Jiang family, everyone worked together to bring up a portion of the grain from the cellar. Originally, Wang Fugue, the father of Xiao Wang, was still puzzled about why they wanted to sell the grain. Xiao Wang explained to him that they had bought a lot of grain in advance. There are a total of 108 households in Jiang Zhiyue village, except for more than 40 households who followed the grain harvest and more than 10 outdoor households just counted. There are only about 50 households left. They have enough food, so there's no need to worry about it. It can be considered as doing good deeds and accumulating merits. The people who came to buy grain lined up outside, and whoever was in turn was allowed to enter the yard. Wulang and Lulang were guarding the small door like gods, closing the door as soon as they entered. When they finished buying, they left one person behind to come in. Jiang Zhiyue has already made it clear in front of everyone outside, and they don't have to worry about being separated and entering the Jiang family to see people and negotiate prices. And seeing the fierce force of Jiang Zhiyue holding a knife on someone's neck without blinking, no one dared to cause trouble. The Jiang family sells grain according to the number of people in the family who buy it, regardless of size. One person can buy an additional 5 pounds of grain. The person who came to buy grain didn't have any objections, saying that the process of grain has always been grateful. When she finally planned to finish work, Jiang Zhiyue unexpectedly came in with Zhou Shi. Jiang Zhiyue looked expressionlessly at Jiang Zhiyue, who was trying to smile in front of her, and said, "I remember Uncle San said not to sell you food. You guys go." "Sister Zhiyue, did my mother make you angry this afternoon?" "Don't take it to heart, she didn't mean to." Jiang Zhiyue walked over to grab Jiang Zhiyue's arm, but she dodged her. She lowered her head in sadness, shedding tears with a tearful tone and said, "I know Sister Zhiyue is still angry with me, but I really accidentally pushed you into the water. Our relationship is the best, how could I do that?" Jiang Zhiyue was really forced to do so. Her family's food supply was also limited. Her mother said that if Jiang Zhiyue couldn't agree to sell food to them, she would save her food for her younger brother to eat. If there were outsiders around, Jiang Zhiyue's behavior would probably cause a few people to feel sorry, but now in the closed courtyard, there are only the Jiang family and Xiao Wang's family. The Jiang family knows what the situation is, but the Wang family, who are not aware of the situation, also stand on the side of the Jiang family. Seeing her father and elder brother puzzled, little Wang stood aside and recounted what Jiang Zhiyue had done. Jiang Zhiyue sneered, "If you were to put your crying demeanor in front of Chen Jitsai, it might have caused some splashes of water. Oh, by the way, I remember the people in the town sent a lot of food to Chen Jitsai the day before yesterday. Why didn't they see him bring some to your house?" On the day when Henrong notified the villagers to collect grain in advance, Chen Jitsai was still at the county school. He didn't come back until the third day of grain collection. After inquiring about the situation, he asked his parents to start collecting grain. But in the end, it was one step too late. Even when a quarter of the grain in the field was confiscated, heavy rain poured down, and then locusts came, leaving no grain in the field. The food delivered to the Chen family the day before yesterday was still managed by his fiancée A.E. in the town to deliver to him. I just don't know if his fiancée A.E. would regret his current behavior if she found out that Chen Jitsai is a half-hearted and ruthless person. Jiang Zhiyue's eyes lit up when she heard these words. She remembered that on that intimate day, Brother Chen had said that he would take her as a concubine if he became a Jiren, so it should be possible to ask him for some food. However, Zhou was unaware of the situation and said, "Whatever the Wang family is doing, just tell us if you are willing to give us the grain." The Jiang family is going to be disgusted by the shamelessness of the Zhou family. It turns out that she is not buying food, but trying to lure a white wolf empty-handed. But they saw that Jiang Zhiyue had her thoughts, so they didn't answer. Jiang Zhiyue looked surprised and asked, "Don't you know that? Your daughter has a close relationship with Chen Xiucai on the skin, why isn't this food worth it?" Jiang Zhilan's gaze dodged as she knew that she had a skin-to-skin relationship with Brother Chen. Jiang Zhiyue stared at Jiang Zhilan's rich expression with great interest. In her past life, she had studied investigative psychology for a period of time due to tasks. She was talking about the time she used her powers to control Chen Xiucai when she went up the mountain, so there seems to be even more interesting situations involved. As she had imagined, after Chen Xiucai and Jiang Zhilan touched the taboo that day, Jiang Zhilan went to find Chen Xiucai a few more times, and then naturally rolled together. Zhou saw Jiang Zhilan's expression and didn't understand anything, so she angrily twisted her arm hard. Although her daughter may not be as good-looking as Jiang Zhiyue, she is also a water-spirited girl from 10 miles and 8 villages. She hasn't married her yet because she wants to find a good family. Although Chen Xiucai is a scholar, her family is so poor that she dares to give herself away like this. No, she can't eat this. She has to go to the Chen family to seek justice for her daughter. Zhou, with a panicked expression and a hint of joy, pulled Jiang Zhilan out of the Jiang family's courtyard, cursing incessantly as she left. But this time the target of the curse became Chen Xiucai. Originally, I saw Zhou and Jiang Zhilan entering and many people waiting outside the Jiang family door, curious about whether the Jiang family would sell grain to them. So when Zhou's cursing came out, there were still many people waiting, and the melon-eating crowd no longer squatted at the entrance of the Jiang family, but moved their positions with Zhou. Selling food to the villagers just now took up a lot of time, even lunchtime was past. Fortunately, I had already switched shifts to eat when I was selling food. Uncle Air and Uncle San will go to town with me again and buy 2 ox carts to come back, said Jiang Zhiyue. I haven't been to town for a few days, and I don't know what the situation is now. I can just go and inquire about the situation. Okay, let's go now. No matter how late it is, it will be dark, said Jiang Yulai. The 3 of them did not drive the ox cart, but walked to the town and arrived in less than half an hour. At this moment, Guzhen was very different from the first time in Jiang Zhiyue's memory. There were very few small vendors selling on the street, and even the passers-by looked dejected. The 3 of them headed straight to the horse market with clear goals, and the gatekeeper was still the guy who received them last time. That guy obviously remembers this girl who was dressed in simple clothes but had a different temperament. Seeing them, the waiter approached with a smile and asked, "Miss, you're here again. What are you going to buy this time?" "Nyocha, take us to take a look," Jiang Zhiyue answered briefly. The guy didn't think there was anything wrong with her attitude, so he took them to the backyard where the livestock were kept. Jiang Zhiyue glanced over and saw that there were only 2 cows, 1 mule, and 1 horse left here. There was no choice. Jiang Zhiyue took the remaining 2 cows and asked the staff to help put them on the cart, one of which requested a frame with a carriage. She also thought that Xiao Wang was still pregnant, and since she had the conditions, she still wanted to make her journey more comfortable. "The frames are already made, just put them on the cow's body." Jiang Zhiyue looked at the busy and sweaty colleague and kindly reminded, "The world has been chaotic lately, so it's better for the colleague to prepare in advance." The guy was taken aback when he heard this, thinking that they had bought 2 more ox carts, maybe they had also heard some news. He smiled gratefully and said, "Thank you very much for your kindness, Mississippi. However, we will only open our last day's door today. When the boss arrives later, we will go to the master. Let's also remind the girl that there are many refugees outside the county town who want to force the county magistrate to open warehouses and release grain. I think it's probably not good." Jiang Zhiyue said, "Thank you, buddy, for informing me." After setting up the cart, Jiang Zhiyue paid and left with Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Yulai. Just as he had walked a short distance, a panicked middle-aged man ran towards him. The man's face was pale and his clothes were messy. Jiang Zhiyue quickly pulled the cart to stop the cow and didn't hit him. Jiang Zhiyue frowned and was about to say to pay attention when he was interrupted by the man's panicked voice. County town, the county town has been destroyed, and refugees have entered the county government. Jiang Zhiyue was originally sitting in the carriage when she heard this and suddenly lifted the curtain to ask, "What's going on? Tell me more clearly." The middle-aged man looked at Jiang Zhiyue as she lifted the curtain and felt the pressure emanating from her. He instinctively told the story as she said it. A large number of refugees gathered outside the county town. I originally wanted to go to the county town to buy food, but the refugees outside were all crazy. After they entered the city, they rushed to the county government office and started robbing others' food without finding the county magistrate. All the food I finally bought was taken away by those refugees. Upon hearing this news, Jiang Zhiyue seemed to have unintentionally asked, "How much food did she snatch from you?" 2 pounds of rice, the man said casually. Jiang Zhiyue turned her head and took out a cloth bag from the carriage, throwing it at the man. Subconsciously, she received it and looked at it, and it turned out to be rice. More than what he finally bought in the county. Jiang Zhiyue said before returning to the carriage, "Let's go quickly." I don't know to whom this was said, but both sides reacted. Jiang Yuqing and Jiang Zhiyue shook their whips in perfect agreement, and the man gratefully glanced in that direction before running away quickly. When the onlookers suddenly realized, they found that they had just been in a daze. Not only had the girl who had just given food left, but even the middle-aged man had disappeared. Everyone was regretful that they didn't react just now, but they didn't continue to worry. They all heard what the middle-aged man had just said. The refugees had attacked the county town, so would they continue to come to their side? We need to hurry home and inform our family to pack up and run. Jiang Zhiyue was also talking about this matter here, and he asked in confusion, "Miss Yu, why did you just give that person so much food?" Remember, the first lesson Jiang Zhiyue taught them is not to be unkind. Jiang Zhiyue would say that because she was afraid that they would be too kind-hearted and cause trouble. She was afraid that she could not always guard them on the escape route, so she must make them understand these principles in advance. She explained, "What suddenly appeared in the little treasure chest that Grandpa gave us should be to thank him for telling us this news." The few pounds of grain she just gave to the middle-aged man were indeed thanks to him for telling them these news. That's it. Jiang Zhiyue didn't get too conflicted. In his opinion, the small treasure box belonged to her niece, and it didn't matter what was inside or what she wanted to use it for. He just asked curiously. However, thinking of what the middle-aged man said, he asked with a somewhat heavy tone, "Should we share what that person just said with everyone? When we go back, Grandpa and I will go to Hengrong's house and say something. As for whether they are willing to believe it or not, it doesn't matter to us. Let's pack up when we go back." Okay. Jiang Zhiyue accelerated the speed of the car, and Jiang Yuqing quickly followed behind. End of this chapter.